The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
I think we spotted him.
Encounters are terrifying. It was all hairy, from head to toe. Thousands of reports. Speaks. You just gotta see it to believe it.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, you have exclusively been selected to participate in a dimension of creative science. You are about to experience the sound enhanced by the dynamic ultra maximizer. Caution. Sudden uncontrolled movements of the muscular anatomy may occur. Do not be afraid. These are the primary frequencies created by the dynamic maximizer. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to Walking Among Apes podcast.
Holy crap. We're back, you guys. I apologize for anyone that was listening to our part one. Well, now it's part one of Meet the EX-MORMONS. We apologize. We had no idea. Apparently, we blacked out. By the way, if you're listening live, let me know next time. Heads up, Ryan. If that ever happens again, yeah, definitely give me a heads up. Let me know what's going on. I had no idea that we blacked out for that long. I think it ended at 130 minutes, 132 minutes, or something crazy like that. It claims 148, but the rest was all silent. We need to get new mics. We need to get this professional. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, something happened with the computer. We're back. And I can't believe we talked for that long without realizing. Anyways, we went over some great stuff that I can't even remember. So we're gonna start again. It won't be as long this time, but we'll get into it. And this is what we're gonna discuss: the core horror argument. Pretty much, what is it called?
The core horror argument.
Beautiful. So if you haven't listened to part one, which I don't know why you wouldn't have, you already know who we're talking to, and pretty much, that was me. Okay. I got a text from Ryan. Let's see.
Now we're hearing from Ryan.
Yeah. We were talking about your Mexican... about your friend's Mexican family guide. What is that? I'm assuming he's talking about maybe the mission and the Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
It must be. Yeah, the Peruvian experience.
Let's go over that really quickly again. Maybe just the fast version, obviously.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, this is the story behind how I really came up with the inspiration behind writing the core horror argument, which is really an epistemological journey out of Mormonism and into atheism and agnosticism, which is a whole trip in and of itself. What those terms mean, Anyways, so basically, in the Book of Mormon, Korihor is a character who is described as the Antichrist, as an Antichrist, and he teaches people. You were asking me what were the points?
Yeah, what are his arguments?
Yeah, so the argument basically, and
who is he arguing with? I guess?
He's arguing with Alma the Younger.
Okay,
Alma the Younger is a prophet supposedly in the Book of Mormon, ancient Native American prophet from the Nephite people, and Korihor has made the argument to the Nephites and has amassed a following in the story of people telling them that when a man dies, that is the end thereof. Yeah. There's nothing after death.
Sure.
He tells them that they're relying on prophecies of a Christ who is to come that they don't know is to come.
Yeah.
About a God, and forced to believe about a God that they don't know actually exists.
Yeah.
And he demands to know if this is real, I want a sign. I want empirical data that verifies it, basically.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that's interesting to me about this, Joseph Smith claimed he translated this from gold plates by the power of God.
Yeah.
Okay. According to most Mormons, not all, according to most Mormons, the Book of Mormon is a historical document. It is a document about historical events and historical people. And if history and archaeology disagrees with that, it's because it's wrong.
Of course.
Right?
Science can never, whatever. They can go fuck themselves. But we got it right.
That's right.
And not one single thing,
got it right
by the way,
source.
has ever been They haven't ever found anything of the Book of Mormon to be true other than the book.
Everybody's found something from their mission. If you went to Chile, the Book of Mormon happened in Chile.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I visited the people and the places. And
That's right. Including there are people who say that the Book of Mormon happened entirely in Mesoamerica. That's probably the biggest one. People who went to Mexico and Guatemala.
The Mayans and Aztecs. And
exactly.
Exactly.
Whereas people who served in New England are convinced it happened where Joseph Smith grew up.
Of course.
And, there are people who believe that it happened here in Utah.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sure.
No one really. They can't even agree. But there's no part of it, by the way, that contradicts any other part of it ever, according to Hugh Nibley, who is a trip to himself.
Yeah.
But anyways, so Joseph Smith, or whoever wrote the Book of Mormon, if we are to say, just play a game, right? And say Joseph Smith wrote it.
Yeah.
Or he claimed to have translated it and it was really written by Solomon Spaulding or Sidney Rigdon or Oliver Cowdery or whatever.
All the above.
Right?
Yeah.
But in any event, it's definitely used then and now as the linchpin of the unique selling proposition of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and all other Mormon churches, including the Communion of Christ and others.
Yeah.
The FLDS particularly. And as their staple, what makes them different is that they have a direct line to God.
Yeah.
Now, as the history of the church has gone on, that direct line to God has said some pretty wacky shit.
Yeah.
and it has changed over time.
Of course.
The current generation, current prophet at any one time explains that they have never contradicted anybody else, anyone else in their line of succession, and anything that is perceived as a contradiction is just being conjured up by people who want to excuse themselves of their sins and their pride.
Yeah.
And the pride that causes them to sin.
Yeah.
Okay. We can talk all night about that kind of thing, but in any event, whoever wrote the Book of Mormon, I feel very certain by the data, lived in the 19th century.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
They were, if it wasn't Joseph Smith, it was contemporaries of Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of explanations of how, that came to be and what the evidence is for that. And there are Mormons who know that is true and choose to believe in the faith anyways. Like I was saying before, they get something out of it besides truth. The true church, it's a great line, and most Mormons, I think, who are active in the church, still buy it. Book of Mormon is a historical document. Joseph Smith talked to God. He did not have sex with teenage girls.
No.
All of this, it is.
And if you're in it, that's the thing,
says.
is half these people probably don't know half the stuff you just said.
And
they don't know otherwise. Yeah.
Right. They don't want to. Or can't contemplate it.
Of course.
And so Korihor puts to them the argument that you have to set a standard for what knowledge is. What do you mean you know that there's going to be a Christ? No one knows that.
Yeah.
Men can't see into the future. How are you going to have these guys who claim that they can see into the future?
Yeah.
He goes and he argues before before the Nephites. Ammon, who took all the arms off of the Lamanites.
Slew them up. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Threw them in a bag, yeah.
Ammon won't even see him. So he gets arrested, which we are told in Alma chapter 30 in the Book of Mormon is against the law, that no man can be arrested for his belief. Korihor is. By the end of the chapter, he's arrested and deported from 3 different areas of the Nephite country and removed because he's a dangerous threat by teaching that you have to consider for a second, that you don't know that there will be a God.
Yeah.
And he argues before Ammon, he argues before a guy named Gedona, whose argument is an argument you hear from people today. Say, why do ye interrupt these people's rejoicings? Well, okay, so you don't believe it. Okay, so you found some piece of evidence that says it's not true. Why you gotta go ruin it for everybody else? Which has got to be the most telling thing ever. If I come to you and say, look, Christian, look, man, everybody's into this. Just relax, will you?
Exactly.
How can that person seriously say, I mean, I know myself that it's true, but if you would just shut up about it, it's
exactly.
like, what's the motive there? He arrests Gedona. Decides that Korihor, who lays it out for him, he says, you say that a child is born guilty of the fault of a parent, but I tell you that a child is not guilty of the faults of parents.
Yeah.
He lays out exactly what you and I were talking about in part 1. Lockean tabula rasa, right?
Yep.
Tabula rasa, or clean slate, says everyone is born ignorant. You and I are born ignorant. We aren't born speaking English.
Exactly.
There's no baby sucking on his mother's breast.
Can I get the other one? You almost out.
Breaks away and says, "Did you know that the sun moves at 260 times the speed of a bullet fired out of a gun?" You know,
it goes right back to sucking.
Exactly.
Yeah. But of course, exactly. You are taught English because, you know, or the same with religion. If we want to look at religions and certain little bubbles, you know, in India, Hindu, or in, you know, and there's Buddhism and Islam and so on, it usually ranges around what your parents are, number one. Yeah. The language you speak, obviously, that's what you are, is what you're around. Okay, I speak English because I'm from Utah. Yeah. And then my parents taught me that. And so on and so on. Why people have such a hard time with, you know, stopping, and this is what I had to do with myself, and the best way to explain it is, I came to this point, started learning some stuff. I said, okay, you know what? Maybe everything I learned from parents and this, why don't I find out for myself? Why don't I delete my hard drive real quick and redo it?
As much as that's possible.
Go and look. Yeah, exactly. Find out for myself what's really going on. Is okay, well, maybe then I'm Jewish. So let's look at it, you know, and you go on, and you learn. Maybe, you know, English isn't, it's just like, you know, playing a sport. Maybe you've been playing the wrong way your entire life, and someone comes in and says, oh, what are you playing? Like, you know, you're supposed to play soccer with your feet, not your fucking hands and punching it, you know, and all of a sudden you get this new thing, you're like, whoa. Maybe everything I thought I knew about this sport, and there's better techniques, and now there's different ways to play. I mean, you can go on forth, but, like, you know, that's what it is if you can delete your hard drive, again, or open your heart to the Holy Ghost of what him and I are both talking about right now. Right. Open yourself to the idea, kind of what, and again, maybe that got cut off, but that part, what did the man say? That you were on your mission in Peru.
Yes.
And you met a Catholic priest.
No, it's just a Catholic man.
Okay, just a Catholic man. Go on.
And he asks me, he says, why would you ask me to give up hundreds of years of family tradition?
Yeah.
Now, in the Book of Mormon, we believe that these people, according to the Book of Mormon, are the descendants of the Lamanites.
Yeah.
Who are, those guys. Anyways. But in the Book of Mormon it says that the Nephite missionaries, the Christian missionaries, went to preach to the Lamanites and against the false traditions of their fathers, right?
Yeah.
So my brain's just buzzing with this, right? The false traditions of their fathers were pagans back then. Now it's Catholicism, right?
Yeah.
And which is another story in itself. In how I learned to respect Catholicism, serving Catholics, basically. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm talking to this guy, and I said, "Well, let me ask you this." Because I'm going to teach you about the false traditions of your fathers.
Yeah.
I said, would you suppose that right now God is trying to speak with you, and He has a message for you personally?
Yeah, of course.
Would you give that up because of a family tradition? And he says, well, okay, so you're saying that because I learned about this growing up in it, that it's not reliable simply because of my family tradition. I said, yeah. Have you ever considered that? And he said, how did you learn about Mormonism?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, that's not fair. I says, you have to understand. In Mormonism, we believe that everyone's a convert. Yeah. Every person has a spiritual experience. And I had one at 14 years old, the burning in bosom, and what I call the bright eyes experience, where, I believe that I saw everything. I saw the whole history of the world, really. Yeah. And it may seem silly now, but you have to remember, at 14 years old, I can really only be held accountable for what I've learned up to that part.
Yeah.
How do you know intuitively something's true?
Yeah.
Moroni tells us in the famous Moroni's Promise that you know the truth of all things according to the Holy Ghost, right?
And the feeling you'll get, the burning in the bosom, you know what, maybe, okay, yeah.
That you can trust that.
And that you are, again, you don't have to necessarily, they're just saying you'll know it inside of you. If someone brings up a good point or something, you'll know whether that person's telling the truth or not, or at least you can start getting green light. Maybe I need to look into this more.
Right.
That warning, that feeling of the Holy Ghost, the spiritual experience.
That's right.
So,
and you'll hear people describe it even today that, I talked to Joe Rollins. Have you heard about this? So sad. So sad. He's such a good guy.
Yeah.
Peter Priesthood guy.
Yeah.
Now the light has gone out of his eyes. That's what they say. They say
exactly.
things like that. And we know it because we heard them say it. We said it. I said shit like that.
Yeah.
And we look at these things. And I had to ask myself in that moment, because this guy, he really made me think. He said to me, I'll tell you what. He said, what do you really want me to do?
Yeah.
I said, I want you to hear a message. He says, no. You want me to join the Mormon church.
Yeah.
I was honest, so I said, yeah, I do. I think it's for the benefit of your soul. And I think to give that up for a family tradition is just, it isn't smart. It isn't intelligent.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. But you're asking me to do something you are not willing to do. And I said, what do you mean by that? He says, well, suppose that I have you come over tomorrow. You and your friend take off your name tags, and Catholic missionaries come over here and teach you about Catholicism. Yeah. And for the first time in your life, you really open your heart. I mean, really open your heart to the possibility that you're supposed to be a Catholic.
Yeah.
Could you do it? Could you, in all honesty, sit there, learn about Catholicism, and ask God if that is true?
Yeah.
If you can do that, I will do the same about Mormonism.
Yeah.
And with all my heart, I wanted to say yes. Absolutely.
And what a fair question to ask.
Totally.
From him to say, okay, you want me to listen to yours? Well, why don't you listen to us and be open about it, and I will be open to yours, but give us a chance.
It's a critical thinking principle of falsifiability.
Yeah.
What's true in this lab should be true in this lab.
It's true.
Right?
Yep,
and
exactly.
anybody who
Math.
tells you, look, I know it's true. I don't need anything else.
Yeah, right.
I know it. I know it intuitively because I have the Holy Ghost. And I even people talk about probably the most macabre examples. People say, well, I know it like I love my family. Like, you think about it. Do you love your family?
Of course.
Of course I love my family.
But it's a chemical.
How do you know?
It's all chemical. Exactly. Of course I love my wife and I have a kid on the way. I've never even met my fucking kid. He's still in the womb.
Right.
But do I love this thing? Yeah, because I'm also seeing future experiences, but also it comes down to science. You're chemically wired to protect.
Perfect.
It's all part of evolution. It's all part of just your natural instincts, and it all comes back just from the bonobos and just that's your instincts. Just right. And we talked a little about it on last night's podcast, just about that fight or flight mode. It's just intuitive. It's just in you, and the same reason why. Women, they have that postpartum for a minute. They're like weird. And they're like, oh, I need another baby in me. And like this weird thing. It's all chemicals.
Exactly. And like I talk about, you think about a feeling like Moroni's promise, right?
Yeah. You'll know it. You won't really have to ask. You'll just know the truth when you hear the truth, and you'll feel it.
You'll feel it. And supposedly that's reliable because it exists independent of the senses.
Yeah.
This is fascinating to me because of Descartes, right? René Descartes, French philosopher, hypothesized basically about the Matrix, like 500, 600 years before the Matrix. He called it an illusion.
Yeah.
Right? But he basically hypothesized that the Matrix was real. And he took the red pill, Morpheus' red pill, to find out how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah.
And he wants to know, he thinks to himself, how do I know what is real?
Exactly.
How do I know this table's real? How do I know you're not an agent of the Matrix?
Sure.
If I am plugged into the Matrix, everything I ever knew in my whole life is being fed to me by my senses. I don't even know that I have a brain in that situation.
Sure.
In that situation, I have a mind, but I don't know that I even have that.
Yeah.
For all I know, I am a thought experiment in the mind of God to himself.
Yeah.
How would I know any different?
Exactly.
Because I perceive everything from the external.
Yeah.
And so his conclusion that he comes down to, so basically that strips away everything about what you know to be true.
Yeah.
And you have to rebuild, right? The first question that you have to answer is, am I real? It seems stupid. I admit it seems stupid. But it's...
Then you have to go deeper. What's real?
Is there a difference between real and not real?
Yeah.
Is my reality the same as your reality? Is my red the same as your red?
My wife brought that question up like 2.5 years ago, and I couldn't comprehend her. I'm like, well, of course, it doesn't matter. Like, okay, look, we're looking at a beer bottle. There's brown. Okay.
Wait, there's no beer here. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I'm seeing brown, and you're seeing brown. And she tried asking me. She's like, well, what if your red is different than my red? What if we're looking at an apple and you see your red and I'm seeing a different red? Right. And I'm just like, that's a ridiculous question because it's not like it doesn't matter. It's the apple it doesn't care what you think it is. It just is what it is, and it's that color. And then I saw she 2 days ago just found the study and stuff about that. Like, are the colors you're seeing? I mean, a colorblind, it varies, but like, are the colors you're seeing the exact same color as what I'm seeing? And are we both agreeing on this is green, though it may look like a red to you, and I may be seeing what I think is a green, but it could be my blue. You know, it's fucking weird. And I made fun of her for it forever. And then I just didn't take it that far. And then I realized, oh, she has a fucking good point. Oh, now I understand what you're trying to say because I just blew it off. I'm like, oh, yeah, of course not.
And it all comes down to cognition, the way we think. We have to factor in, even if you're saying, "Oh, well, no, I have a direct line from God. I got this experience." It doesn't have to do with logic. It has to do with this experience. Bullshit. Yeah. It has to have everything to do with logic. The logic has to check out, right?
Exactly.
But people are afraid to apply that, or they don't know how. It is entirely possible that you don't know how to think. And that sounds so mean to say to somebody, but the reality is we all started out that way.
Yeah. And no one has a fucking guide at this point. No one knows what the hell they're doing here. There's no point A to point B. This is what you have to do in life, and then you die. That's like babies die in the womb sometimes. So to say to everyone that life is this, that's not necessarily true. And when does life start? It goes deep and deep and deep and deep, but you've got great points.
And things like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Alexander Luria.
No.
Alexander Luria.
Maybe.
He was a Russian neuroscientist.
Okay.
Around the turn of the 20th century. And he was trying to study what makes people think. What is thinking, actually?
There has to be almost like a thought to the think, to make you think to the thought to the think.
Right.
That's fucking trippy, yeah.
Are there different kinds of thinking?
Sure.
And so he conducted an experiment. He went to Uzbekistan, where there are a lot of very uneducated people and illiterate people. And he was trying to discover if there was something about the mind that was different between people who learned how to read and people who didn't know how to read.
Got you.
And so he was, and had they developed something different. And
good point, okay.
And he proposed syllogisms, right? A syllogism is a series of statements designed to use logic purely. Yeah. It has, you use devices, archetypal devices, to explain the concept so that it's easy to think about. It's like a game.
Yeah.
But you're really exercising your logic muscles.
Yeah.
And so one of them is, he says, okay, for example, he says to these Uzbeki people, he says, okay, cotton grows well, and this is good because these people know about growing cotton.
Sure.
Cotton grows well where it is hot and dry. In England, it is cold and damp. Will cotton grow there? And the answer they gave him, I've never been to England. I don't know what you're talking about. We don't leave this area. We don't leave this country. This is our country. I've never been to this England place that you speak of.
Sure.
And he says, and he'd ask them, he would prompt them, and he'd say, no, listen to the words I'm saying. I'm saying, cotton grows where it is hot and dry. England is cold and damp. Will cotton grow there? He's trying to show to them, reiterating verbatim again and again and again. It's got nothing to do with fucking cotton. It's got to do with all the information is contained inside the syllogism.
Yeah.
Think it out with the logic. Think it through. And by and large, they couldn't answer the question. So he would follow it up with something else. Something totally cognitive imaginative. It had nothing to do with anything in their experience.
Yeah.
He said, where in the far north, where it snows a lot, the bears are white. Okay? In Novaya Zemlya, which is up north, which is in the far north, it snows all the time. What color are the bears? And the stories that they would give back to him, you can't ask me a question like that. I've never been to this place. They could not conceive, even just for the sake of a logical question, just to work out the logic, they could not conceive of the scenario he invented.
Yeah.
It has to do with the fact that at some point in your life, you actually learned how to think. And
it's true.
It has something to do, we know now, with reading and being literate.
Sure.
It has something to do with a lot of phases of development. Now we know a lot more.
Well, and then I just always remember, like in elementary school, those those paragraph type questions, or sometimes it's like, so-and-so gets on the boat, they get off, who stays on, who's getting off, or the train, and the point of how many people are on the train now?
Right.
You know, those kind of questions and those things, maybe that's what they're really trying to start implying is think what we're saying. It doesn't matter about if the train or this or that, just start adding the numbers, or also it's assisting you with your brain to think another way is, I'm doing math in a real life type situation. You know, 4 people get on the train, 2 get off, how many are on? Oh, 4, 2, okay.
Right.
You know,
it's like
interesting.
It's like IQ tests.
But then again, on the or wherever this place was, they have a good point too, because they're speaking truth of what they know. They're not taking some. You know, again, I'm not brilliant into science or the stars and these things, but I've taken logic and I can read and I can trust enough that what scientists are saying are these certain things, and you do your own research to a point, but you find and start to make your own stuff. Or, you know, again, you take what the Book of Mormon or the Bible, word for word, well, it said this, so this is it. This is the truth. You know, at what point do you start thinking, wait, did Jonah really live in this fucking whale? Like, come on. I mean, like, you have to start thinking, is that possible? Well, it was a big fish. Sorry.
Right.
But, you know, it's you have to start thinking for yourself. And so I understand the other side as well. Like, it comes down to reading, but they were only speaking the truth of what they knew, which was, I've never been to England. I've never seen a white bear.
Perfect.
You know,
it's a question.
It's kind of a... It's a different thought.
Yeah, exactly. If you take everything that you've ever experienced, you, Christian Stevens, were born somewhere, you lived somewhere, you had these experiences, then you're here, then you'll have more, then one day you'll die. Yeah. Boom. Right? And all that cumulative experience you have up until now informs you in what you would call your bias.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
I mean,
it's what I believe, what I don't think, what I feel, what I agree with, what I don't agree with,
what you experience,
who the fuck I am, my DNA practically, you know. But it constantly changes. Ask me 4 years ago who the fuck I was. Completely different Christian.
And that's everybody.
And that's called evolution. Now, if you sit and stay the same thing, and you're believing the same shit, and you're doing the same 3 hours of church every fucking day, hearing the same... I never understood church, you know? You did the... Okay, I remember from, you know, whatever, but it was the same shit every year after year, and it would change up, but it was the same shit. And that's where I was like, why do I need church? Like, I get the points. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't fuck, but what else do you know I need to learn? Oh, but you need to hear about this Alma guy. Wait till you hear about him. You know, but
I mean,
go on.
So the question is, can you rely on your bias for truth?
No.
Can you rely on on that cumulative experience to tell you what's real?
No.
Okay. So all your life, you know that tactile sensation. If I touch this table and I feel it, you know I'm feeling something real.
Yeah.
How do you know? How do you know that's something that's your nerves, supposedly, sending a signal to your brain, supposedly.
Exactly.
That's what Descartes said. You know, I perceive all these things by the senses.
Yeah.
What isn't perceived by your senses, what isn't accumulation of your experience, if you are to distrust those, right? Yeah. You think about a magic trick. Why are we amused by a magic trick?
Because it tricks the fucking mind. You weren't expecting it. You don't. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. Right. But it's something that you can't. It's not like you can't believe, but it's something that's like you want to believe. So it depends on the trick. It always depends, but it's a trick.
It's inconsistent
it's that trick,
with your bias.
It enlightens you, and it's just like holy shit. Whether that's levitation, like you believe no one can fly, no one can levitate. All of a sudden you see some. Holy shit! What just happened, David?
Well, exactly.
Like, and then you start.
But
fucking
do you believe that guy has magical powers?
No. I just think it's a trick.
But you're amused by it.
Sure,
and you watch it. You know,
it's enjoyable. It's awesome.
We find amusement in the fact that our senses can deceive us.
Yeah,
and our relying on bias doesn't give us
like
truth.
Optical illusions. They're awesome.
Exactly.
Check them out, and you're like, holy, whoa, and you can see different things, or it's like your brain plays tricks.
In your whole life, you have never gone to a movie. I'm a video producer by trade and filmmaker by trade. In your whole life, you have never seen a moving picture. Ever.
Gotcha.
You've seen still pictures played back so fast that it tricks what we call persistence of vision.
Yeah.
Your persistence of vision into an illusion. Your brain is like that.
Yeah.
There's no instantaneous cohesive thought.
Sure.
Transferring from this part of your visual cortex that sees your mother and identifies her as your mother by her physical features.
Yeah.
And the part of your brain that feels that that's mom.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's actually possible, we know now, by what's known as Capgras delusion.
Okay.
That you can suffer a blow to the head so hard that those two parts of the brain, your visual cortex and the fusiform gyrus in your brain that actually recognizes your mother, and the part of your brain that thinks of her as mom and feels that she is mom, get severed in their connection, and they no longer talk to each other. Yeah, and then there's a story about a guy named David who woke up in Southern California from a car accident. He'd been in a coma for weeks. Yeah. His mother's by his side. He has her thrown out. His own mother. Yeah. And the doctors come in. They ask him, Dave, do you know this woman? And he says, well, oh, sure, I see what you're trying to pull. She looks like my mother, but she's not my mother. She's an imposter. Yeah. And he got, what they found fascinating is he gets emotionally violent.
Because it's this trick. You're tricking me. You're trying to elude me and trying to teach me and think, that this is your mom, but otherwise emotionally, no. And that's why he's so emotionally upset.
The crazy thing is they take the guy's mom into another room. Okay. They put her on a telephone. Have her call his room. Yeah. He puts the phone up to his ear and he talks to her on the phone. Same woman. Yeah. And he says, Mom, you wouldn't believe what they just tried to pull over on me. They brought a woman in here, looked just like you, and tried to pass her off like I don't know my own mother. Yeah. And she cannot convince him that was her. Yeah. In whatever had severed between the part of his brain that feels mom and the visual cortex and the part of his brain that recognizes mom's physical features had not severed the sound of her voice, his auditory senses, and that same feeling. So he can bond with his mother over the phone, but he can't look at her and bond with her without getting upset.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's crazy. And you also hear about the people who get in comas or they get knocked out and then they wake up. They're piano players or they're idiot savants. These amazing, cool things. But it comes down to the brain, how it's wired, how it's chemically, how it's twisted or bounced or.
So inside your brain could be part of the matrix.
Oh yeah,
so to speak. Sure, it's not necessarily internal of you.
Now, an interesting thing that you can do, I know it's like $15,000. It's really expensive, but you can go to this thing. They hook up all these things to your head, and for the first time ever, they make your brain starts thinking and makes sound. And you go in a black room, lay down on the table. They put speakers there on the side of you, completely pitch black. And your brain waves start making the sound, and then for the first time ever, your brain is hearing your brain, and now it's fucking with it. It's like, holy shit, am I? Who am? What am I? What am I hearing? And then your brain is hearing itself, and it's just trying to figure out. It's this mind fuck apparently, but apparently it's a great way to learn things. Or if you do it for hours upon hours, like IQ can go up, and you just start talking to yourself, and it changes the waves and the sounds. I have to look more into it, and hopefully one day, they could make a household type thing that everyone could do something like that. Mm-hmm. But the brain and psychology is fucking fascinating. And when it comes down, and there's tons. I have a cool, really close friend who's doing studies right now up at the U on psychology of religious experiences or brainwaves. They'll put them in, they'll wire them up, black room, whatever, but they'll play religious songs to them or something, and they'll just see the parts that light up in their brain and these things, and then they'll play other things and just see how it differentiates. And they'll do the same thing to like a Catholic person or someone who an atheist or someone who doesn't whatever, and we all realize we all have those same enlightening or magical experiences. People just feel in different ways. I feel it sometimes by this conversation right here, learning something I didn't even know. Lights it up, man. I'm just, holy shit, I learned something new. I can share that information. That's amazing. They hear the same, this religious song or this stuff, and they're trying to figure out if, religion is all, those holy experiences that you're feeling, and those, it's the ecstasy of the dopamine, and there's certain, it lights up those electrons and those things in your head going on, and it's not necessarily real. It's real to you, but it's not, it doesn't mean, again, it's green's green. It's flat out. Everyone feels it, same song, same, whatever. So it's interesting.
And everyone has to resort to the plain reality that you've never seen the world through anyone's eyes but yours. Yeah. You've never experienced...
It's the Truman Show. I mean, yeah.
It's the Matrix.
That's true.
So the question that plagued me was, at that point, was how do I know that Moroni's promise doesn't work inside the Matrix? That, the Matrix is, tactile sensation of this table.
Sure.
It's not a burning in the bosom. It's not the bright eyes experience that I describe about it.
But technically it's a sense of feel, right? Wouldn't you say? Is it a sense or is it?
That's a question. And can you sense things? Can you have feelings, for example, that feel real but are really a result of a biochemical reaction?
Yeah.
For example, lust.
Sure.
Right? How often has the church told us, don't confuse love with lust, right?
Yeah.
Why do you feel lust? Feel the primal urge to procreate.
Oh, yeah.
Right? To keep the species going.
Yep.
Or at least to get your fucking rocks off.
Exactly.
And so it's a primal urge. So much so that it can confuse your mind into feeling something that it's not really feeling in the way that we think.
I mean, even think about like masturbation. Masturbation itself, you're in the room by yourself. You're not literally fucking someone. It's you in your hand, but your mind is playing tricks to the point that it can actually ejaculate, or whatever. You can come, and is it a trick? Is it real? What's the difference? I mean, point A, point B. It happened. I came, and I did it. Your brain, how strong is it? I know there's interesting studies. There's a great show called Masters of Sex that's out on Showtime.
Oh yeah,
about
totally.
Dr. Masters, and they go. There's a guy who could come by the thought within seconds,
right?
But he could do it, and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't figure it out, and it's interesting what the mind can really do.
Right. And you feel, for example, there's something that's common, especially among men who masturbate. I'm sure it's common among women also. But immediately following that, you have what?
It's not even like a regret. It's like your brain comes back on, and it comes down with like blood, right? That your body only has enough blood to really run.
And hormones and
the one of the done.
Right. Exactly. That you feel this sense of guilt that for years, that for forever has been sold as God telling you.
Yep.
I see you.
Yeah.
You think you go in that room and I don't see you. I see you.
Yeah, exactly.
But what is it? It's a biochemical reaction of the brain. We know that. We know what it is.
Yeah.
This is the thing. As we go learning more about the way, through scientific discovery, we dispel ignorance.
Yeah.
That's why the God of the gaps doesn't work.
Yeah.
God of the gaps is this idea that God is everything we can't explain about this universe, because it seems so tempting to say, well, okay, so we understand this, but it doesn't explain this. We understand this, it doesn't explain this. We understand this, it doesn't explain this, and the why, and the and all of this.
Yeah.
But as we go understanding more about the solar system, it becomes less mysterious to us how it comes to be.
It's true.
As we understand more about how many galaxies there are in the world.
Fucking nothing, man.
Right. Carl Sagan's pale blue dot that he talked about. And when he says, you want a spiritual experience, read that, Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan. Yeah. And where he says, we exist in this pale blue dot going around this humdrum star in a forgotten corner of the universe, a universe where there are far more galaxies than people.
Yeah.
Talk about your mind trip, right?
Yeah.
As we understand those things, we dispel ignorance. As we dispel ignorance, if God exists in that ignorance, we go literally learning ourselves out of God.
Yeah.
We go diminishing God as we learn. That's why the God of the gaps argument has been abandoned by Christians who used it for years, for the longest time, and don't even realize they're still pulling God of the gaps.
Yeah.
Well, the whole fine-tuned for life argument, I go into at length in the core horror argument. We can talk about this forever, but ultimately, here's the thing. How do I know that this 14-year-old boy, Joey Rollins, didn't go into that room, pray to God, get this tremendous spiritual experience saying that Mormonism is true, and actually experience a neurological response of some kind, a placebo effect, if you will.
Sure.
That made me feel something because I had to. If I didn't, I was going to feel lost.
Yeah.
And is it possible that my brain can cause the emission of some hormone in my body that feels like the burning in the bosom?
Of course.
Is that so much? Is that really so difficult to believe as compared to what happened with David and his Capgras delusion?
Yeah.
Where he's convinced this woman is an imposter.
Yeah.
Because he's looking at her instead of hearing her on the phone. How would you know all of this, right?
Yeah.
So how do you know what's real? we come down to this conclusion. I believe that I am real. Do I know that's true? According to Descartes, he says, cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
I've heard that before, yeah.
Right? So he basically, his question comes down to motivation. He doesn't come up with evidence that it's true. He basically comes down to the conclusion. If God makes me as a thought experiment to himself, the very fact that I can blaspheme makes it not seem right. Because then that is God communicating with God.
Not believing in himself.
And exactly, which would make him imperfect. So there must be some part of me that's imperfect because I can blaspheme.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can think about these things. Or, you take God out of it, make the Matrix. Why would the Matrix make a part of itself that doubts itself?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well,
and
it just, none of it makes sense.
Right.
I mean, so much, there are so many points. It just doesn't make sense. If God is God, and he makes, and again, he's a jealous God, which why? He's the one and the only God of this whole planet, or hence our universe, or whatever. Who knows how far these Mormons believe that the God controls? Is it just Earth, or is it our solar system, or is it the galaxy? Is it the fucking universes?
Worlds
is it,
without number.
Exactly. And that's just it's a cheap cop out of, well, we're never going to be wrong. Whatever you think, that's what it is. That's what
it's plentiful and nothing. It's not cheap cop-outs.
And it blows me away that, if he's the one and whatever, and this was where I always came into play too when I'd never even learned the facts of Mormonism, but I had doubts. Number one, if Jesus comes down and he says all this stuff and he's saying, love thy neighbor, and, treating them like you would want to be treated and love everyone. And he's not fucking stuttering. He's except for the gays and the blacks and, the slaves, and they don't count because they're not human. And
sometimes I'm about that. Sometimes I'm
exactly.
not.
It just depends. It just doesn't really make any sense. And that was my first red flag growing up, was just like, and I had known friends who were gay from elementary school. I just knew they were different, and I loved them, and we were still great friends, but I knew that they were different, and I knew that they were gay. And as, years come, sure enough, they come out. Oh, okay, well, but someone doesn't choose to be gay, so young always, and again, everyone's different, but, so young, you just, I think it comes down to chemicals, and it comes down to those things, but if God is perfect, why is he making imperfect things to throw down and just to toss at us, and he's testing us, and he's doing this, and hence he created a life to simply be nothing. That you're saying that my gay friend who was born gay is he was just here to be just to fuck with all of you, and then he died, but he never had a chance. He never had a fucking chance. It so many flaws within God. And also, if God was real, then he wouldn't mind you questioning and looking for him. And really asking questions. If there's really God out there, then can he prove himself to me? Like, what this? Or show, or maybe he, you ask questions, you figure it out. And if I were to die today, right? Or if God were to come tonight, what would I... There he is. Right. Holy shit. Whoa. Just like this table. This table's real. I picked it up. I dragged it in my house. I put it there. And it's real to my perception. Right. And I have it here. If I saw God, then I know it's real. It's kind of like the polar bear thing. It's, for things that I haven't experienced or done, I can't, it's like asking someone, what's that roller coaster like? Oh, it's really, really scary. Then the other, the bigger brother, no, it's not. It's fine. It's like they went on the same ride, had totally different perceptions. Whose is right, whose is wrong. You can only talk from your experience of what you've dealt and what you've done. And again, from only what I've experienced now, to me, God does not exist. But if he shows up, fuck yeah. Hey, what's up, buddy? And you know what? He should never be mad at me for questioning and wondering and looking for him, or ask questions and search that far instead of just taking my next door neighbor's word for it. Like, yeah, oh, he's real? Okay, thanks, Bob.
Have you read Thomas Jefferson much?
I've never read a full book of his. I know that he wrote a Bible that took all this stuff for Jesus out. And then I know that so many, and that's what I love too, they say that we're a Christian nation. We were found on, no, we weren't. George Washington, Ben Franklin hated Christianity. He said it was, churches are, I'll have to find some quotes, or maybe some.
Thomas Jefferson,
man,
illustrated.
Great thinkers.
Here's what I'm saying. You Christian, who have not read much of Thomas Jefferson, I'm deducing from what we've said.
I just know that he wrote a Bible, but
no
took
facts
all
about
the Jesus
You
miracles.
have just perfectly elucidated exactly what Thomas Jefferson said once to a nephew of his, I believe it was. And he said, question with boldness, even the existence of a God.
Yeah.
And I'm going to mar this a little bit, but he said, for if such a being even exists, he must better regard the reverence of an intelligent person, an intellectual concept,
someone he created to do something,
than that of blindfolded fear. Exactly. Okay, so you have to be able to think about these things. So this is what Descartes comes down to, and Korihor ultimately comes down to, and Joe Rollins agrees.
Yeah.
We know, I believe that I am real because of cogito ergo sum.
Yeah.
Okay? Just not because I know that's true, but because it's not useful to think about anything else. For me to conceive of a universe where I don't exist gives me nothing.
Have you ever done that?
Oh, yeah.
I did that as a kid. It was the weirdest thought for me. And again, I can't get this point across by vocal, but what I did is I was young, and it was this weird thought that popped in my head and said, what if there was no God, no church, no world, no planet, no stars, nothing, fucking nothing, black. And no one existed. I never existed. No one's, nothing, fucking nothing.
Yep.
I sat there for hours trying to fucking get that. My eyes closed, just realizing nothing. Not even silence. Silence wasn't even a thing. Like, it just fucking went so deep again down that rabbit hole that I was just like, and it didn't get me anywhere. But it was an interesting thought, and I still remember the emotions and the ideas I had felt was like, holy shit, like if there was fucking nothing, no planets, not even cold, hot, sound, weather, nothing. What the fuck? Like, it was such a weird feeling to feel.
Right.
But such a good one for me to feel, and I still remember that. I was so young, but I felt it. I was like,
it didn't lead
shit.
you anywhere, but you could do it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And that's the point. You were developing the ability to use cognitive reasoning. You could think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe that I am real. I believe the universe is real because I observe it.
Sure.
Even if it's the Matrix, fuck it. Real inside the Matrix is real of a kind.
Yeah.
You know? And then the third is I can learn about it. I can learn about this universe around me. Mm-hmm. I don't know that everything I have learned is true, so I must accept the reality that my opinion can change with new information.
And also not having that ego behind it. You know, if the difference between me and maybe a staunch crazy atheist, which is not crazy by the way, but is someone, you know, I know God it doesn't exist. I know, it's the same thing as saying I know God does exist. I'm completely, by the evidence, by the things I've seen, by the questions I've asked, what I've observed, what I've learned or studied, and again, I know I'm real, and I haven't seen it, so I can't say that's real. Right. So what I've came to the conclusion is there is no God for me.
So far.
And again,
information
he comes up to my fucking door, or if he pops up, or Jesus is real, or whatever. Maybe it was fucking Buddha. Maybe hey, you're there, you know, and that creator should, I'm sending you to hell because you questioned, you know, if I was real or not. You'd actually put effort into it.
Right.
Like, what the fuck?
It's like...
And I still treat people good, not banking on the idea of maybe getting extra wives in the afterlife after, you know, or money or blessings or certain things. I treat people because it's the thought, the theory, the whole... That's how I want to be treated. I just think it's good. You know, don't fuck, you know, my wife without asking me, or don't, you know, whatever, or don't fucking, you know, kill me because I don't want to die. Do you want to die? Okay, right. But it's like Ten Commandments. We don't need that shit.
The morality. Exactly. Does there exist an objective morality? And that whole question. And
it comes down to, you know, you can look at bonobos and you can look at monkeys, or just look at fucking animals. Yeah. You want to know the biggest mind trip that we're talking? You know, you look at the universe, you can study and learn about the universe. Mm-hmm. We know a lot about up there. We don't know much about like the Mariana Trench, or you see the fucking creatures that come out of that place. Mm-hmm. Just watch a deep sea creature documentary. Mm-hmm. Holy fucking shit! Yes. Some of the craziest things that are glowing, neon lights. Right. And what the fuck are they? There are so many things we've never seen before on camera.
Right.
But we think they exist, or we found, you know, we've never seen it living technically, but what the fuck? If you want a mind trip, just watch a fucking deep sea documentary on those creatures that live down there. Mm-hmm. Holy shit. Or, you know, plankton, or something way smaller than that. It lives as a brain. It's thinking, it's eating, it's surviving. Mm-hmm. And something that fucking small, grain of sand small, it has its own matrix. I mean, if you want to play it like it's that in itself, it's again, I can do whatever the fuck I want up here, and it's going to do whatever the fuck it wants down there, and I can be aware of that, but it's not thinking of religion. Oh, please, fuck, Poseidon.
That's
oh,
not
shit.
useful.
Oh, you know, it doesn't care. It doesn't think about it. And again, I don't know that.
Right.
I can never say I don't know that.
Right.
I mean, I can say I don't know. And
what's the harm in that? What's
Exactly.
the harm in saying I don't know?
Yeah.
Does Moroni's promise work? I can tell you beyond the shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
That the Moroni... You can't tell me that.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that.
Yeah.
You don't know, and that's
And
horrible.
you've lost your argument right there. It's
Exactly.
the people that say that. It's
right.
just, all right,
See,
now
here's
I
the
know
thing.
who I'm dealing with. A crazy person.
There's 4 kinds of ignorance that I talk about in my book. And, you know, somebody call me out if I'm missing something here, right? But people who are into theology explain this. The 2 circles. I don't know if you know Josh Furstein. He's the guy who gave the $100,000 atheist challenge with the 2 circles.
Ooh.
That guy. Okay, the red baseball cap.
He's got big beard, hat. He's nuts.
I am here to claim my $100,000.
Okay.
Here it is. Okay. So he draws the 2 circles. Small, tiny circle,
Yep.
great big circle.
Yep.
Great big circle is everything everybody has ever learned.
Yep.
Small circle is what you have learned. Mm-hmm. He's describing ignorance. He doesn't realize it. He's describing 2 kinds of ignorance. He's describing, first of all, that which you do not personally know. Are there things that other people have learned that you have not? Sure. Are there things that those people, that nobody has ever learned, that we can?
Yeah.
Yes. Those are the first 2 types of ignorance. That's Josh Furstein's little circle and his big circle, which is accurate. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's true. Now, that there are those 2 kinds of ignorance.
Yes.
Okay? But 2 ways to overcome those ignorance. You can overcome ignorance by making those circles bigger.
Yeah.
Right? I can expand my little circle by learning.
Sure.
We can expand the big circle, the cumulative body of knowledge of human beings, or conscious creatures at the least, by discovery, by learning new things on behalf of science, right? Yeah. Learning and science. Those are the expansion of those 2 circles.
Yeah.
There's 2 more kinds of ignorance that I would say. Take those 2 circles and draw 2 boxes around them. One around the little circle, little box around the little circle, and one around the big circle.
Yeah.
Those are the boxes that limit the growth, that say you, no matter how hard you try, Christian, are never going to get past this. Yep. You are never going to grow beyond this box.
Yep.
And those boxes are on the big side, on the big circle around us, is the realm of the absurd.
Yep.
That is that which we do not know because it is not knowable.
Yeah.
Best example I know of is Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
Says, "What is the color of jealousy?" Fuck you, tell me that there's a color for jealousy, then we can talk about whether or not there's a color for jealousy.
Yeah.
Well, can God lift a rock? Can God make a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? Talk to me about how we know there's a God. Then we'll talk about rocks that are made by God, right? Yeah. That's the realm of the absurd, that which is not knowable. And we don't know where that line is yet. We know it as we learn more things. But everything outside of that, we can't learn.
Yeah.
Outside, then you have the smaller box. The only one that is your ignorance that you personally hold responsibility for. Mm-hmm. That's cognitive dissonance. Yeah. That is that which you will not learn because you choose not to. Knowledge you choose to dispossess.
Exactly.
I compared it in the last podcast to if you were the kind of person who said, if my wife were cheating on me, I don't want to know. Yeah. I don't want to know.
I'd rather not know.
I'd rather not know because I just know how I get.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'd rather not know. If the church were true, if Joseph Smith were having sex with 16-year-old girls and 15-year-old girls, if Joseph Smith started a bank where he basically squandered the funds of all this prominent members of the church.
He broke the law. He conned a lot of people out of money, caused suffering to people and families.
And why was he even in Carthage jail to begin with when he was killed?
And that's something I do want to get to tonight. The true story behind Carthage jail.
Let's do it. So because it plays right into this.
Okay, let's do
William Law was the second counselor in the first presidency of the church at the time.
Yes.
Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith had approached him and asked him to lie or not to speak from ignorance
About the polygamy, right?
About polygamy.
Yeah.
And he attested, these men do not practice polygamy. I would know. Yeah. I live with them. I converted to this church.
Of course.
Would someone like me, basically, would somebody like me, intelligent man that I am, wealthy man that I am, well-to-do man, who moved from Ireland for this church,
sure,
would I do this and stand up as a member of the first presidency? If exactly. These men were doing this, I wouldn't do it. It's a question of my character. And then as soon as the threat abates, he is approached by Hiram Smith saying, actually, we have this revelation, which is now supposedly Doctrine and Covenants 132.
Isn't it an angel comes to him with a burning sword?
That's a story that Joseph told.
And said that you have to take on more wives and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, that he didn't want to.
Yeah.
He was
reluctant. Of course. Which, let's be honest here, if that ever happened, first off, you would not say no to a being that comes to you, and whether it's an alien or a fucking whatever it is, you just, okay. Well, and number two, you're a man, and he's saying he's giving you permission to have sex with multiple things, and he's got it covered. I know he's lying right off the bat. Any man would say, fuck yeah. Like, okay. And I'm cool with that, and you'll cool. Oh, all right.
But it struck William Law's conscience.
Of course.
He made this. Good. He made a name for himself on that. I wouldn't associate it with a church like that.
Yeah.
And here it is. Your church is a church like that.
Yeah.
He was ignorant of that before then.
Sure.
And on that journal entry on New Year's Day, 1843, he recorded that it drives the mind almost to madness. That drives the brain almost to madness. Yeah. What Hiram Smith had approached him about.
Did he ever? He discusses it.
Oh yes.
Saying, okay.
He goes to Joseph Smith and he tells other records show.
And you
him,
were saying.
That he actually grabbed Joseph Smith by the neck, which was a dangerous thing. Joseph Smith knocked people's lights out, literally. He when he was challenged by people, he would punch you in the face and tell you, the guy was strong.
Sure.
And he would knock you straight on your ass.
Yeah.
And anyways, so he handles Joseph Smith and begs him, just drop it. Whatever it is, we can get through this.
Yeah.
Just drop it.
Yeah.
At this point, Joseph Smith descends into absolute paranoia. There's even records where they're building the Nauvoo temple at the time, Nauvoo. Mm-hmm. He has everybody gathered together. And one of the most prominent members of the time, of the church at the time, is a doctor named Robert Foster.
Yeah.
His brother, Charles Foster, is basically called out by Joseph Smith by everything but name in this meeting.
Yeah.
And he's standing up there and he's talking about the enemies of church and how he's got enemies inside this church. Joseph Smith talking about this. And he starts nailing off all of the reasons that he thinks there are some people present in this congregation here today who are plotting against me.
Yeah.
And he starts describing it. Charles Foster stands up bravely. I mean, the prophet speaking.
Sure.
Stands up and effectively says, "Sir, do you mean to implicate me by these accusations?"
Yeah.
Says that in front of the church, in front of the congregation.
Which, of course, is not what he was thinking he would happen.
Joseph Smith turns to him and says, "Sir, I do mean that exactly." He tells him, he points out that I'm talking about you.
Yeah.
And Charles Foster turns out to walk out, and he turns to him and says, "You'll hear from me," and turns to walk out. Joseph Smith says, "Sir, I fine you $10 for that threat and for disturbing this meeting." I mean, he's descended into full-on paranoia.
Yeah.
At that point, Robert Foster, who's one of the most respected members of the Mormon community, stands up and begs with Joseph, pleading in front of all of these people in the temple. No, he didn't threaten you. Let's all stay calm. Let's all, nobody heard him.
Well, and also, it wasn't Jesus, and they were throwing people out who were doing things in the temple back in the day with money.
Uh-huh.
That's another thing, too. It's just really random.
Oh, not so random. I mean, but he's...
But just wasn't that frowned upon by Jesus, that people were doing business or talking money in the temple?
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's Joseph Smith saying, "Hey, you know what? $10.
Right.
You owe me $10 fucking in the temple."
When I was in the church, and you remember you used to pay like a couple bucks to get your temple clothes if you didn't bring your own temple clothes?
No,
really?
They used to. If you're doing the baptism for the dead, they used to borrow the things or whatever.
You never went through the
never went through the temple. So different. Did you go previous of them changing it?
No,
with the hands.
I was 10 years old when it changed.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's something crazy another day, or we can get to later. But
let's jump ahead now.
Okay.
Well, let's get through this. Okay.
So $10. They're pleading, saying, "Hey, just kidding, relax."
The man is just going insane. I mean, Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
At the end of that, he sues Robert Foster in court. He takes him to municipal court, and he challenges him in front of all his congregants. Joseph Smith was a pretty eloquent speaker. And he would get up there and he'd say, "Sir," I would challenge you to tell me at a time and place where I abused you. Tell me, time and place. And Robert Foster played it coy. He said, "Sir, I do not feel at liberty to say," which you can totally say. You can totally legally say that.
Yeah.
He says, "I do not feel at liberty to say. I do not feel at liberty to say," until Joseph Smith just storms off without him. He says, "You, sir, have insulted me in person and insulted my character in public," and leaves.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the guy's just going crazy. Anything said about him, he takes not just offense to, but he takes as people plotting to kill him. This is where he starts talking to people and saying, "There are people plotting to kill me. They may come after you. If they come to kill you, and you are asked to lay down your lives for the gospel, die like men." Yeah. That was the kind of language he was using at this point.
Yeah.
William Law, who is a wealthy Irishman,
sure,
goes out and buys a printing press, and no sooner than when he is excommunicated from the church, and I believe it was April of that same year. He's excommunicated because he tells Joseph and Hiram, "I've discussed it with my wife, and we won't have anything to do with this polygamy thing."
We're out, yeah.
Right. And so the day that he tells Hiram this, he's out of the first presidency. Sure. Within days, he's out of the church.
Of course.
And, I mean, he's devastated at this. He still believes it's all true.
Crazy.
I know.
Yeah, when you're talking to the guy who started it all, and you can kind of start feeling it. I mean, it's like, okay.
So he goes out and buys a printing press.
Yeah.
He gets that printing press and sets together with all of the prominent ex-Mormons who have left, and sets down their stories and public affidavits about the sexual proclivities of Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
And then he compiles it into what's called the Nauvoo Expositor,
which was, we'll keep going.
Which was a newspaper.
Yeah.
A bona fide newspaper. It had terms for payment and everything. You could subscribe to this newspaper.
Yes.
Like any other newspaper. Then when they run the first issue and people are circulating it, I don't even think they really ran that many prints of the first issue, but it existed. And Joseph Smith's paranoia could not sustain that.
Yeah.
Joseph Smith calls the city council. At this point, he's a public official. He represents the city of Nauvoo.
Uh-huh.
He calls them together and basically calls together the newfound Nauvoo City Police, which are basically the Danites.
Yeah.
And he orders the printing press destroyed.
Yeah, it says right here, Joseph Smith illegally closed down the Nauvoo Expositor, the newspaper, after it honestly and accurately reported that he was a secret polygamist. Mm-hmm. And then he illegally closed it down, the paper, and destroyed the Expositor printing press in the street. In the street, and there are reasons that he was arrested, and he became arrested in June of 1844, which sent him to Carthage jail.
Arrested on charges of treason.
Yeah.
He's arrested for violating the First Amendment rights of William Law, and he damn well should be.
Yeah.
He arrested the man, or he destroyed the man's ability to print and use the freedom of the press.
Sure.
Now, I learned about this on my mission. On Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, which was compiled by his great-nephew, Joseph Fielding Smith.
Okay.
He records an interview between the governor of Illinois and, quote, General Smith. Joseph Smith
which he also was
militia.
Yeah.
And they talk about it. And Joseph Smith comes to his own defense and says, "We understood by our public charter, when we applied for a charter for Nauvoo, which used to be Commerce, Illinois, that we had the power to deal with a public nuisance as we saw fit." Now, the governor, you have to understand, the Mormons were basically welcomed into Illinois to sway the votes for the state legislature.
Sure.
Because Missouri had run them out because they were killing Missourians.
Yeah.
and so they're like, well, you can come
down
here.
to the swamp, to Nauvoo.
Just make sure you come out here and you vote Democrat. No, vote Whig. No, vote Democrat.
Yeah,
exactly. And so they're going over that. And so And so the guy's still trying to win the Mormon vote over. He's totally placating Joseph Smith through this whole interview.
Sure.
And Joseph Smith says, look, I had it understood, and maybe we were wrong, but we had understood that if it was a public nuisance, that for our public safety, we could just deal with it.
Yeah.
And if we were wrong, then we were wrong.
Yeah.
And it basically gets left at that. Joseph Smith is probably never going to come to justice for this crime. People are fed up with it. It was wrong what they did to him.
Yeah.
That mob. But it's totally understandable. The guy got away with murder. He got away with murder. He got away with sexually molesting children, teenagers.
Yeah.
He got away with horrible, horrifying things, and people had had enough. There was no police force at the time that could handle it. There was no FBI.
Sure.
There was nobody, there was no CIA. There was
Plus
no
it's so
way to
spread
track
out,
these
and
things.
it's a shitty part of Illinois. It's not like now that you can just drive. All right, we'll drive. It's like you'd have to plan days to go to this place with the covered wagons, and you'd have to get. It's much different than just now. Every town has got that setup thing.
That Joseph Smith's first significant affair, whether or not there were others, we don't know. But the first significant affair happened before 1836 in Kirtland, Ohio, and he dies in 1844. During that whole time, he is having these affairs with these women, and people, including the women themselves, defending him, saying it's not happening.
Yeah.
Lying under oath, perjuring themselves, saying it doesn't happen.
Sure.
And the whole thing founded on lies. Yeah, absolutely, it makes sense that he was tried for treason.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, it's just crazy. So let's get into the polygamous part of it. I mean, so the first... Well, is it the first... So Emma and Joseph practically adopted some girls.
A girl named Fanny Alger.
Yeah. And at the age, she was... What 14. Age did she move in? 14.
She was 14 when she moved in.
And then, no one knows
Probably by the
date
time
of when
she
it
was
started.
16 or 17, she was having a sexual relationship with Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not they were married seems implied. I mean, that's the way he did it.
Yeah.
He would tell people that he had this special doctrine, that he was revealing it just to you, and, that God had made it certain to explain to him that it has to be kept very secret.
Sure.
He just, what rapists do. He did what molesters do.
Yeah.
And so Emma doesn't want to believe it.
And she walks in and she sees him in the barn. They're like, "Where's Joseph?" "Oh, in the barn." And she peeks in. She sees them having sex. Again, Joseph Smith, the prophet of the LDS Church, the man who spoke and saw Jesus, fucking a 16-year-old, or at the time maybe 19 or whatever. Fuck, whatever. He was married, had and technically this is his daughter. I mean, they adopted or whatever. We're letting him live there, and. So Emma walks in, and Emma had no clue about this. I know that it was hidden from Emma for a long time, as a smart man would. If you're going to do that, it's not like your wife says, "Well, sure, why not?"
And Emma is a bit of an enigma. This is where I've fallen down on Emma, is that after he had died, for years she maintained he never practiced polygamy.
Yeah.
Her boys, she taught them he didn't practice polygamy.
Yeah.
And, towards the end, she knew Eliza R. Snow was one of her best friends, her closest friends.
Yeah,
she founded the Relief Society with Eliza R. Snow.
Yeah.
And she finds them together in her house.
Yeah.
Okay? She knows. Okay? The whole situation with Oliver Cowdery, right?
Yeah.
We've heard all these stories about Oliver Cowdery, how he received the Aaronic priesthood together with Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
How he sat, the church
by
has...
angels, by people, in the temple, and getting lessons.
And Joseph Smith...
Peter, Paul, and John. And,
the church publishes images of Joseph Smith sitting over the gold plates. Not how it happened, even by his own account.
Exactly.
Sitting over the plates, thinking about it, and feeling out the inscriptions in the gold plates with his finger. Yeah. And Oliver Cowdery sitting across from him, taking dictation of it, as if Joseph Smith warned everybody: if you look at these plates, you'll die. Yeah, it would kill you.
Yeah.
And so anyways,
which is such a good way to never pop up and show it, and also proof. No one's ever seen the golden plate. No one. There's nothing of it other than the Kinderhook plates, which we false.
The three witnesses claimed that they did. in one document.
Exactly.
That's a key thing, and one that really honestly always bothered me. But I didn't feel at liberty to discuss it.
Sure.
But why all three of these men had to draft into the same document their experience? Yes. Why didn't we have the testimony of Martin Harris, the testimony of Peter Whitmer, the testimony of Martin?
That's what you do for a business. If you have testimonials, they each give their own account of that testimony. That's not just all, we all loved the movie, it was great, thanks. Right. No, you get movie reviews from multiple people, and then you make your own judgment. But you don't just fucking get, well, these guys liked it, some hated it. It was, see for yourself.
And there is now, as you follow the document of all of these people who signed, both the 3 witnesses and the 8 witnesses.
Yeah. I didn't even know there were 8 witnesses.
Oh, yeah. The next page is the 8 witnesses.
Oh.
Half of which were Smiths.
Yeah.
Or Whitmers.
Okay.
And so it's like, but you follow the accounts of these people, you see that they immediately start to diverge as soon as they are not in the same document put together.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a way of lending another man's credibility to Joseph Smith's explanation.
Yeah.
And even the printer of the Book of Mormon asked Martin Harris. He said, as he's reading, he's printing the book.
Sure.
He's printing Martin Harris's testimony.
Yeah.
Martin Harris mortgaged his farm.
Yeah. I've been to that farm.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He mortgaged his farm to secure the printing of the Book of Mormon, because they didn't know that it would sell.
Yeah.
And the printer wouldn't do it unless there was security on
it.
Yep. And the printer asked him, the guy sending the manuscript said, "You saw these golden plates?" And his answer was, "I saw them with the eye of faith."
What?
That's totally different.
And that's false, what he just signed or attested to and said. That's completely different than, it's, again, knowing. Oh, I know the church is compared to, you were there, you actually know. Mm-hmm. Big difference.
Mm-hmm. And it all comes down to how it's entered into the bias.
Yeah.
If I enter into your bias and you say, "Joe, how do I know you? All these things are true?" I say, "Do you want to see the written testimony of the witnesses who said they physically handled the plates, that they looked at the inscriptions, that they saw an angel? Here you go. Here's 3 guys right here. You want more? Here's these other guys. These 8 guys had a similar experience.
Sure.
And you see their names right there. We wouldn't print it if it weren't true." It's like the internet, right?
Exactly.
It's Wikipedia. You can't print it.
You
can't put it on the internet if it's not true.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's a great point. And it's just, all this is really, really fascinating. The death surrounding Joseph Smith, how it all went down at Carthage jail, completely different if you have ever seen the Joseph Smith movie, which is on YouTube now. If you want to throw it, the LDS Church's view of it, hilarious. I mean, they play it out again. What? Well, for their views, and then we're just going to toss them at Carthage jail, and all of a sudden, some guys came in, the mob got mad, and they were sick of the Mormons because they're following them from Missouri, and they're mad again. And, it's just this constant thing that they didn't have anything else better to do, and they jumped in the jail, and they shot him and killed him. But we have, who else was in? There was Joseph Smith, Hiram, and another who ended up becoming the prophet. Was it Woodruff who was in the room with him as well?
No, John Taylor.
John Taylor. Who ended up becoming a prophet later on in the church.
Yeah,
he was there, and he gives witness that obviously there was, in fact, a gun smuggled into Joseph Smith.
Oh, yeah.
That it was smuggled in. There was a gun there.
Right.
And it was more like, again, when they call it martyr, no, it's an okay corral shootout. I mean, I don't care if you have one. Obviously, it's the Last Stand, the Alamo, whatever you want to call it. But it is what it is, and it wasn't just this martyr as they play it out to be. It was... There was a gun. Some people had gotten shot.
Right.
Joseph Smith had shot people. I don't know if he officially killed.
He did.
Do we know how many of that day?
Oh, no, as far as I understand, if I remember correctly, he killed one man who was charging them up.
Yeah. And then Hiram got shot.
I mean, it's not like he looked at he fired wildly.
Sure.
Several
and I know he had gotten someone.
Yeah.
Much different how they portray it. And that's another thing, too. If you are a Mormon and you're hearing this and you're seeing this and you've seen ask these kinds of questions. Go back to your church and say, what happened? And that's the funny thing. If you ever go to Carthage jail, never been, but you can look up YouTube videos of people who go all the way through it, the entire tour there. And at the very end, do you have any more questions or anything? Tell us about the gun that was smuggled into Joseph Smith. then they'll tell you about it. Right. They won't tell you as if it's fact. They completely brush that under the rug. So they're telling you what they want to tell you, and then if you want to hear that part, you have to ask about that part.
It's the same thing with what did Joseph Smith say when he died?
Yeah. Oh Lord thy God is what they say, he said. But from Masonry, I learned this really quick. And here's another small funny sign about it, is he knew that there would be Masons. He became a Mason. And then, by chance, 3 months or whatever months later, the temple starts being built, and he decides he wants to make his own temple, which is what we've called it forever. Yeah. And he got for good reason, because number one rule of Masonry is you don't make a religion out of Masonry. The whole point is we don't talk religion, politics. You're just here to, we're doing Masonry, and we're here to do better for the world. Okay. Yeah. So he decides, well, I'm going to make my own thing, and Hiram became one. He was a master mason. He learned all these cool things, the fancy sayings, and the hand symbols and shakes, and that. What do you think the temple is now? When I went through, and again, I have never been through the Salt Lake Temple or anything in town. I've done baptisms for the dead. I've seen the YouTube videos. I've seen, I know word for word. I've seen the thing. I know what happens flat out. And again, there's a difference between the versions now that you would go through today compared to when did they change it? Was it
1990?
1990. There's a different one. The hand, the slitting of the throat, the guts, the words that we say, the certain things. When I went into Masonry, and I am a master mason, I've left Masonry now because you can't be an atheist to be a mason. And I won't talk shit on it. I couldn't feel comfortable and be good about, being part of my lodge or that situation.
Sure.
And lying to myself.
Yeah.
If their rules are that you can't be atheist and you have to believe in a higher power to be a Freemason, then I was going to abide by that rule because I respected it. And I said, well, that's fine. And I learned some great things. It was awesome.
I don't know if you know about this story about this guy out in California.
I don't know.
Guy was convicted on drug charges.
Okay.
He got clean in jail.
Okay.
One of the stipulations of his getting parole and getting released,
it was about him going to jail because he had to believe in a higher power.
He had to go through AA.
Or he had to admit it in AA, yeah.
Yeah. And so because he said, well, I'm an atheist, so I can't do this whole higher power thing.
Yeah.
Their whole story is now, it wasn't always, but it is now, that it doesn't have to be God. It can just be like a higher, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically what I call the Chopraic religion. Deepak Chopra says the universe.
It all is.
Yeah. And so that's all you need. And then you can go through all the steps. And he said, no, I just don't believe any of that.
Well, in AA, and the thing is like they say that, okay, you believe in the high power. But I have an AA book. I'm not an alcoholic by any means, but I have that book because I just wanted to learn about it. And you can flip through the pages and you have to admit, I surrender myself to this higher power because I am weak and I am, it beats the shit out of you. Yeah. And you just have to put your hands, well, I fucked up. Dad, please give me another chance and give me another, help me fix my credit, my life, or whatever it is. But you're just admitting, I'm a fuck up. I fucked up. I can't do this without this higher power.
But here's the thing about AA. Take that as an example.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, there are people who do AA and they get sober.
Sure.
Right? For those people who will tell you, you don't have to believe in my God or this person's God. Yeah. You just have to have a higher power because it doesn't work any other way.
Yeah.
Right? And for those people, they get something out of it.
Yeah.
What is the possibility that if I say to a Mormon, it's now no longer a question. It is a matter of documented history that Joseph Smith was convicted of being a disorderly person and an imposter for selling his services as a glass looker, using that stone that the church is now willing to admit is what he claimed he actually used to translate
the black hat, the South Park,
and the hat, exactly, which shook me to the core when I saw that as a teenager. I went, "That's not how it went.
Yeah,
that's not it."
Yeah,
I know all about this, guys. I am a Mormon.
Yeah, exactly.
And how embarrassing to find out South Park knows more about this than I do.
It's so true.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone know more about this than I do. Yeah. Anyways, but that he used to use that peepstone to sell to people that he could go onto your land,
find gold
buried by ancient Native Americans on your land.
Yep.
And when he did, and you went to go find it, to go dig it up, and you didn't find anything, he warned somebody, you better not do this. This is actually a grave site. And if you keep digging, the two men who buried this treasure, murdered one of them, murdered the other, and you're going to release these evil spirits, and so it's down there. I just quit digging for it. It's just going to bring all kinds of bad maladies on you. It's like, oh my gosh, the guy's a con man.
Sure.
If I say to somebody,
and didn't they pay him money? Like they paid him money up front.
Yeah.
Like I know there's gold on your land. I've been dragged here, and there's gold on your property. Pay me this percentage, and then I'll go out and get it, and you give it, whatever. And he'd bounce at Skip Town and to the next place.
And then he would say, and then in the same case, it was claimed that he took that stone. This is before
the seer stone,
the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Before the whole story of the Book of Mormon ever took off.
Oh yeah.
That he could take that stone, and he could look at it. He could take a book in any language, turn his ear towards it, and then take this, it was a different stone. Take this translucent stone and turn it to the light and read the text that was written in the book in English. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can say that to you if you are a Mormon. Some Mormons, like you or like me, if we found out that was true, because of critical thinking, because we know the answer to the question, what color are the polar bears? What color are the bears in Novi? Because we are able to think of it, and we are willing to. Yeah. We're willing to challenge it because we know that we are ignorant by birth. Yeah. We know that our bias and our senses trick us. We know that we are ignorant in general, and we are not willing to box in our little circle with the little box. Yeah. I want that box off. If I can take that box off entirely, I'll do it, because I would fill up that big circle with my little circle if I could.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And the way to do that is critical thinking.
Absolutely.
Asking questions. Is it falsifiable? Is it something? Is there extraordinary evidence for that extraordinary claim? Do you believe something without evidence? Yeah. And all of these arguments come down to this: how do you know you aren't being fooled by your bias? How do you know that what you're experiencing by your senses is not a product of the Matrix? How do you know that what's spiritual is different from what's a physical sense?
Yeah.
Hunger is a physical is an emotion produced by a physical need, starvation, desperation, that can cause you to do horrendous things.
Of course.
The starving times in Jamestown.
Dahmer, people eating.
Well, in Jamestown, they were walled up inside that town. They now know what was rumored to have happened. They now know by archaeological evidence. They would take the first ones to die of starvation, and they would take their brains out through a hole in the skull, and they would cook it and eat it.
Yep.
Because it's what they had to do to survive, and it changes their physiology. Mm-hmm. The Kopgras delusion situation. All of these we now know that your brain can trick you into feeling something. Mm-hmm. How do you know that's not how do you know that's not the Holy Ghost and Moroni's promise?
Yeah.
You don't. You have to be willing to accept the possibility. Like that Catholic guy who approached me. Will you come over to my house and open your heart to the possibility that you should be a Catholic and hear Catholic missionaries? Exactly. And with all my heart, I wanted to say yes. And I said no.
And what did he say? Do you remember?
He said, I said, I am here to teach you. I'm not here to learn from you.
Yeah.
And I've been sent by God with a message for you. You either want to hear it or you don't. Yeah. And he said, I don't. And I said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do then. We'll leave your home with a prayer, and I hope that you change your mind. And I said, can we leave a blessing on your home? And he said, no. Fine, whatever. I stood up and I walked out, pissed. For the first time on my mission, I remember feeling distinctly pissed at an investigator.
Yeah.
And
what did he say? I don't know if we got that for that last part, but what did he say that left you with the critical thinking thought?
He said, I want you to come over to my house. We had started out with the family tradition thing.
Yeah.
I said, like the Lamanites had their father's false traditions. Yeah. This guy has his false traditions, but it's just Catholic. Same group, same story, just different theology. Yeah. And I said, if God were trying to communicate with you right now through me, would you turn that away for the sake of a family tradition?
Yeah.
And he had challenged me, how did you learn about Mormonism? I explained, of course, I learned about it from my parents who were Mormons. Their parents were Mormons. But I was a convert. Because I had this experience with the bright eyes and the glowing chest feeling. Yeah. And that's when he issued the challenge. He said, okay, I'm willing to accept that possibility. But you're not willing to do it. You're asking me to do something you're not willing to do. Yeah. And that's to consider changing religions purely because I don't want to have a family tradition interrupted. Well, you come over here and can reconsider Mormonism. Yeah. And I couldn't do it. Yeah. I wanted to, and I couldn't. I ran into my bias at that point. I hit my square, my tiny box around my tiny circle, and I came to realize this is something I want. This is a border I want to cross, and I'm afraid. Yeah. I'm afraid of what it would mean. And from that point on, when I would work, I would feel the Spirit. Yeah. And I would have these incredible experiences with the bright eyes and the warm, glowing chest feeling and everything. But when I would pray, it was empty. And from that point on, when it was just me in the back of my eyelids, I didn't believe anymore. And when my companion would go to sleep for the next year, my companions would go to sleep. I would get up in my bunk and I would kneel and I would pray and I would ask God, take this from me. This is too much. All of a sudden, everything I read about Joseph Smith was tainted. All of a sudden, I got to section 132, and he's talking about all those who do not enter into the new and everlasting covenant of marriage, which still today includes that a man can have more than one wife. And everybody who does not embrace it, i.e. William Law, i.e., even Hiram resisted it at first. Oliver straight up rejected it. And the whole concept of it, everyone who doesn't agree to this new and everlasting covenant of marriage and enter into it cannot excel, cannot have the continuation of the seeds forever, and so cannot become gods, cannot fulfill the measure of their creation. And so they're damned. Even saved people, saved in the celestial kingdom, are damned. And all of a sudden I saw Joseph Smith in a way I had never seen it before. Because right after that is Emma Smith. And he describes, now mine handmaid Emma Smith. And he starts going over and talking about all of her sins and the terrible thing that she has done. And doesn't say exactly what it was. Turns out Emma Smith had this confrontation with Eliza Snow. In which, in some traditions, some people believe and have said, and it is reported by some pioneer stories, that Eliza R. Snow miscarried Joseph's baby because she was thrown down a flight of stairs by Emma Smith.
No way.
Her best friend. And all of that happened.
And I don't blame Emma. Let's be honest here. Like,
who would blame it?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
And the first time with Fanny Alger, Emma didn't approach Joseph, as far as we know, as far as I know.
How could that not happen? Or
at
least home in the
here's
bed.
The thing.
You motherfucker.
Right?
Like
she did. She went to Oliver Cowdery, and she said, and that's how we know about the Barna experience.
Gotcha.
She went to Oliver Cowdery and said, I want you and Martin, I think it was Martin Harris. I'm not, I'll have to check my facts on that.
I think I have a note about it, but keep talking.
She said, I want you to go to Joseph. Basically, she says, I want you to go to Joseph and tell him I know what's going on with this girl. It's disgusting and it has to stop. And she's willing to forgive him. She's willing to take him. This woman had Stockholm syndrome like you couldn't believe, right? She loved the guy.
Yeah.
She really did. And she's going to them to beg them to intervene on her behalf and say, get right with your wife. Get right with the church. Come out and admit that you're a crime here and what you've done, and everything with this girl has got to stop.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, Joseph and Oliver leave on good terms, right? There's another passage, I'm almost reluctant to mention it because I haven't found it again. I've read it once, but there was a passage where somebody says they were talking to Joseph Smith, and he explained to them that he felt guilty about an altercation he'd had with Emma where he had to discipline her. And whatever happened, he felt guilty about it. And we know Joseph Smith, when he was challenged on his prophetic abilities, would physically handle grown men and hurt them. I strongly believe
Oh, there was abuse.
I strongly believe that he would hit Emma. And
Of course.
that there was
times were
there.
different back then. It's women. You don't question authority. You don't just.
That's right.
And even up into the 40s, that was just that thing. It was just how it went. But here's where it kind of let's see. It says Oliver Cowdery, a friend of Joseph Smith, and the scribe, obviously, the Book of Mormon, and one of the three witnesses, obviously, he left the Mormon Church in 1836 because he claimed to catch Joseph Smith having sex with his beautiful 16-year-old nanny, Fanny, in the barn of Kirkland, and also Cowdery was later a counterfeiter in Michigan as well. And there was something else that she had brought up, but here's another part about Emma, at least. Let's see. Nancy Rigdon tried to sexually seduce. That doesn't make sense. It says, okay, Joseph Smith always publicly condemned polygamy. Obviously, we heard that when he was yelling and stuff like that. Then it goes right here that it says, but secretly he married his own foster daughters, the Lawrence sisters, Maria, Sarah, ages 16 and 14. He secretly married women already married to other men. That was another thing. He would send people on missions to England, other places.
Orson Hyde.
Married, yeah.
Orson Hyde, he sent to Israel to dedicate the Holy Land to the return of the Jews.
It's so great. It's just a good way. Get the hell out of here. Let me have sex with your wife, and then come back. And but shh, don't say anything. You know. And then when a wife got pregnant, he quickly married them off to another man. Joseph Smith did not practice what he preached. Obviously, he married at least 2 sets of mothers and their own daughters. Funny thing here, Leviticus 20:14, and if a man take a wife and her mother, it is wickedness. He's a wicked man. I mean, and that's the weirdest thing too. You're marrying a mom and the daughter. It doesn't get more fucked up than that. I mean, it is pretty.
If it has
wacky.
its own category of pornography on somewhere on
I'm
the
sure.
internet,
Yeah,
then
exactly. And now he would fit
something
in
somebody
fine.
considers taboo.
But there's so many random things. But again, the sneaking in of the gun with Joseph Smith, and where I was trying to go with the masonry is there's a certain kind of a
distress call,
and he assumed obviously that there were Masons out there in this mob,
and there would have to be.
And and plenty of Masons were pissed at him. He got kicked out of the lodge, and he made a religion off of Masonry, and then threw in all the other stuff that made his thing better and benefited him. And polygamy.
You'll note that he starts to say, he goes, "Oh Lord, my God, is there no help for the widow's son?" Something like that.
Beautiful.
And then what happened? They fucking shot him.
Yeah. Because you know what? He wasn't practicing what he's preaching. He wasn't one of them, and he wasn't using it. And he was hoping that was his last thing. But of course, the movies and the portrayal and the writings all say, "Oh Lord, thy God." Those were the last words out of his mouth as he fell off the window, shot and stuff. Was
right.
"Oh Lord, thy." He just as he was going, that's what he said. No, it's "Oh Lord, thy God." Is there any mercy for the widow's son?
Right.
Which is the Freemason call, and it goes back to biblical times and yada yada yada. But that's what he was doing. He wasn't trying to, "Oh Lord, thy God, how'd you let this happen to me?" And no, he was. That was the last fucking call. Now that just shows you right there. He wasn't calling out to God. He was calling out to humans. He was calling out to someone else in this crowd. If there's anyone out there, make this stop. Whatever. And if you care, but he was no longer a Mason, and he had perverted Masonry, if you want to call it that, and many of the things to this day within church, and all the temple, I've seen the rituals. It's just rewording handshakes identical, and arm. You have the square there, and the garments have logos and things like that. And
the thing that's different is that for a long time, major things were different. Number one is that there was an oath you had to take to avenge the blood of Joseph Smith. That was included in the temple ceremony after his death, and for many years. Okay. And another one is the penalties. So in the temple ceremony,
which is still in there in Masonry, but they warn you. They say, "Hey, just know this is all factual. This we don't mean this, and even if you leave, we're not going to rip your fucking tongue out and yada yada yada." Right. But more back then. They probably could have meant it, and obviously that was something they ripped off of Mormonism. I mean, and we're talking, what the javelin through the heart. What is that called? Where you what is it called? Do you know what I'm talking about? The where you have to like if you were to fuck your brother's wife or something like that, and you both had sinned, the only way for you to become clean was the javelin, and they put the heart on the door. What is it called? Oh my gosh, I can't even believe I'm forgetting this. But it was mainly done by the people that Joseph Smith had gotten his little, who were the people it wasn't Porter Rockwell, but it was the people the
Danites.
Yes, them.
Yeah.
It was called the Blood Atonement. The Blood Atonement is what it mainly was. And it was that thing, if the only way for us to both be clean is to really have a javelin shoved through our fucking throats and those things to happen, and that's the only way that I could fix this eternal sin that I had fucked
effectively up. Because it was a sin so egregious and so personal that the blood of Christ could not be required to atone for it.
Yeah.
That you needed to atone for it with your own blood.
Yeah.
I mean...
And another crazy thing to even talk about, and if no one's ever seen it, is September Dawn, or just learning about Mountain Meadow Massacre. That's a whole nother. I mean, we could go hours on that. Bad boy.
I talk about it in
your book,
in my speech that I gave to the disciplinary council that excommunicated me. And I said, you read Joseph's. Yeah,
tell me.
Let's see.
Thanks for staying tuned, by the way, everybody. If you're still up. And if you're not, thanks for listening to this podcast. I know it's long, but I hope it's informational. I hope you got something out of it. And,
So this is from my speech, the big speech. A memorial was erected by the church to the families who survived the victims of the Mountain Meadows Massacre. But read President Hinckley's dedication, and it's loving and sweet, but there's no admission in it. No responsibility or accountability for the roles that Brigham Young and George Albert Smith played in it, and others played in it. What if we learned to say, this is from my speech to this church, what if we learned to say, this was us, we did this, and it was wrong, and we're sorry? Wouldn't the worst thing that could happen be that you trust the Christian hearts of your flock to forgive? I mean, that for me...
says it all. I mean, practice what you preach.
Yeah,
and if you don't lie, don't cover it up when we know what happened and what we have accounts, we have things, and if you don't know anything about the Mountain Meadow Massacre, first off, watch September Dawn. Again, realize it's Hollywood, but right. a lot of the points bring great stuff, and it really shows you kind of how. Even back then, how the families or those small little towns and those things, how a polygamous family was ran and thought, but it's a crazy story what they did, and you realize really quickly this isn't just a church. I don't know, how do you describe? I mean, it's a cult, but it's also like that you talk shit or you're against us or whatever. We're gonna kill you.
Yeah,
and that's what happened. They killed women, men.
And here's the thing. I mean,
kids.
I asked this question several times. I mean, since I left the church.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was a shameful thing to be a Sunday Mormon. If you were a Sunday Mormon,
meaning you're just Monday through Saturday, you're all doing whatever, and you show up just Sunday and
coke,
gotcha.
You swear,
sure,
and when people
it still is.
People talk shit about Joseph Smith, you roll your eyes and say, yeah, well, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But now that's the rank and file Mormon.
Yeah,
it is where I'm coming to. I'll tell you, I was waiting to be excommunicated effectively. I'd given my big speech. I stood up in front of 15 members of the High Council, and I laid it all out on the table. And I
don't understand how those people who can hear that, and again, if they're always doing this excommunication, at some point they gotta think, okay, exactly. Something might be going on here, or I need to look into this. I've never heard that. When you're telling me these things I've never heard, right. It sparks my what? What do you mean? What?
Right.
That happened?
Right.
I mean,
there was somebody who spoke up during the discourse after my speech.
Yeah.
One of the members of the High Council.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned Richard Bushman, active member of the church who wrote Joseph Smith, Rough Stone Rolling, which has got to be one of the most honest accounts of Joseph Smith ever written. I think much more so than Fawn Brody.
Okay.
And I highly recommend it. And he says, it's shocking to me. I'm butchering this phrase again.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me that people still believe that the polygamy didn't start in the church until Brigham Young. until Brigham Young's ministry, that people would actually not take the interest in it, to a faithful Mormon historian, is shocking. One of the members of my council, my high council, said, I've read Richard Bushman, actually. And I looked at him and I said, oh yeah? And he's like, yeah. And I know about those things you were talking about. As if I was supposed to be impressed. I mean, it's like I'm sitting here.
You're the fucking fool there.
Anything inappropriate right now is everything I'm thinking of saying to you. Like,
exactly.
And you, nothing stirs you, because for you it doesn't matter whether or not it's true.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether or not it's real. I go out afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. We're sitting. My dad's over here on my left. My bishop, I guess, my wife's bishop, I call him, is sitting on my right. The bishop's got to be my age or younger, honestly.
Yeah.
And interesting guy. He and I have already had a lot of friction.
Sure.
And I was sitting there. I was talking. I made some offhand comments about. It's not as if I said anything about the penalties being removed from the endowment ceremony.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, the bishop, and he says, "What are you talking about?" And I said, well, okay, for example, I pointed to my dad. I said, when you got your temple endowment in the 1970s, this was a part of it, penalties. That isn't a part of it since those of us who've gone through the 90s.
Scared people away. These people were going, they were getting married. Like, what the fuck is this?
Of course they were.
You know, it's becoming more... Exactly. And they're like, what the hell is this?
Right? It was Gordon B. Hinckley who was in charge of really kind of sanitizing the whole experience.
Yeah.
And then doing this big temple push. What happened in the 90s after that change? Oh, we're building temples. Yep. We're going to have more than 100 temples. Oh my God, we're going to have more than 100 temples?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
All of a sudden, everybody was going to be doing this in the church all over the world. Well, okay, so and my dad, you know, is a smart guy. Sure. I mean, software engineer since the 70s. And an analytical person and a good person. I don't want to, you know.
Yeah, of course.
I love my dad. One of the best things, I think, one of the most mature things we do when we become really adults is to forgive our parents.
Yeah, it's true.
You have to really embrace the fact that your parents were doing the best that they fucking could with what information they had.
It's true.
It's about bias again.
That's
they
true.
were born ignorant like you were born ignorant.
Yep.
And they were doing, what would you do for your kid?
Yeah.
What you thought was best.
Yeah.
They were doing. You have to see the love in it.
Exactly.
You know. And so my dad nods his head. He says, "I do remember something about that." You know. Well, yeah. From 1976 to 1990, supposedly they were doing it once a month at least. You know, at that time.
Oh yeah.
And the guy sitting next to me, the bishop, doesn't believe it. Doesn't believe a word of it. He's got the guy sitting right there. He's got me looking at him.
Yeah.
And it's like you seriously are trapped so much inside your little box. It's like the people who...
You won't believe the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah, and here's a guy who experienced it. He did it. He lived it. And half the other people probably on that council who are older had done the same thing.
Right.
And he could just ask them, and they'd say, yeah, well, and then what? You know, but not believing.
And what would it mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's just like Luria's white bears in Novaya Zemlya.
Exactly.
He cannot conceive or fathom because he's got a motive behind it.
Yep.
He's got
I've got to be
something.
It's the motive and it's ego. It's I'm right. I'm a bishop. Who are you?
Exactly.
And you know, exactly. I'm a bishop. You're just a member. Like it comes into that play, and that's awesome. At least your dad had backed you up. So I think I remember something like that. That's interesting.
But like I say, some people get something really amazing out of it. Who are we to say that they're wrong or stupid or whatever? But you know, my message isn't to convert people away. It's like I said in that speech. People ask me, do you really think you're going to convert 15 high priests away from the church? First of all, it's totally possible. But I said, no. But if I can get one person to think when they are judging in a council like this one, to think about a person who's being judged because they're gay, to think for a second that there were once a group of people who were run out and persecuted because they violated the a man and a woman definition of a family, who were called the Mormons, then I've done my job.
Yep.
All I'm asking is, think about, you're asking someone to struggle against who they are. You know? You don't, I'm a lost cause because I learned how to think for myself.
Yeah.
I can't be saved at this point. You know, but Joseph Smith says, a man cannot be saved in ignorance. So I went out trying to dispel my ignorance. And I went too far down the rabbit hole.
I guess so, darn it.
I took the red pill and I went too far down the rabbit hole.
But how many... Would you say that I don't want to say life's benefited, right? But do you feel better about yourself in a way of like...
It was devastating.
It was devastating for you?
This is... I mean, I feel like
And you did this back in the day. Now, I don't want to say I jumped on the bandwagon by any means, but I had learned at a time where it was more factual for me. I could see the facts. I can read it. Here's the documents. Here's the papers. I can talk to so-and-so. You did it at a time necessarily where it was not that common for excommunication or leaving the church or doubting the church.
Well, I mean, it's definitely becoming more common.
Especially now.
Marlon K. Jensen, who was a Mormon apostle,
yeah,
has said publicly now, and it is now a matter of public record, that the church is suffering a faster attrition rate since Kirtland, right? And that's quite saying something. Yeah. After that Kirtland savings, I call it the savings and loan scandal.
Yeah, so that's what it is.
And the thing about it is that for me, I warn people. I feel like I do have a purpose that I give myself. I don't believe in God. Yeah. I don't know that there isn't a God. I fall in with Neil deGrasse Tyson, right?
Sure.
Have you ever seen Neil deGrasse Tyson? Goes
I've
on
seen. Everyone always calls him atheist. But I've seen the videos and stuff of him. He's like, I don't know why everyone keeps claiming you're in this and this, but exactly, it's that.
He calls himself an agnostic. I've called myself an agnostic for years. Yeah. Because I see the atheists as being these people who say they know that there's no God. You don't know that there's no God. I don't know that I'm real, much less that God isn't real. Sure. Right? But I come to understand atheist is not our term. Sam Harris talks about this in more eruditely than anybody I can think of. And he says they don't have a word for people who don't believe in the zodiac. Nobody says, don't leave your kid with that guy. He doesn't believe in the zodiac. Yeah. You know, he doesn't even know what his sign is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have a word for us because we seem to be in the minority. But like Bill Maher says, what a fucking minority. Yeah. There are more people who are godless in this country than people who are black.
Exactly.
There are more people who are godless in this country than people who are Jewish.
And it's growing.
And
I love it. And it can only, and that's the thing is, if we can get to that point, we can actually start doing some things, hopefully with government, with rational stuff, or facts, or science. Well, this is why we can benefit from this, compared to, well, I just don't like gays and they shouldn't get married.
Right.
And, you know, yeah.
And
it's like we can actually do stuff off of studies and facts.
When they look at us and they say, you atheists, if we put you in control, nobody will ever have religion because it'll be against the law. Yeah. It's showing their bias. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're ascribing to me character flaws in your personality. Yeah. We aren't here to tell anybody you can't believe or worship as you like. Worship as you like. Believe what you like. Don't prohibit other people from worshiping or being what they want.
And don't make laws. And Utah is such a... I love this place. It looks cool, but I have a hard time, man, when it comes like liquor laws. You know, the only reason we have a lower percent is because of that. You know, right. Or the Zion curtain. Liquor has to be hidden behind like. Whatever happened to church and state? The only reason those laws are because the church, and obviously they all are dining parties. They're all up there together. They all have influence and great and you know whatever. But Utah's starting to finally change. And you know, and the funniest thing is, before gay marriage became legal, I thought for sure Utah, the last state. You know, right? they're the last. Okay, fine, fuck, we'll give in. Holy shit, was I wrong? And you know, and then you hear people talk about marijuana today. You know, like marijuana, you know, and now it's starting to legalize, and okay, and I'm sure I could say the same thing, and I hope I'm wrong. You know, it's a fucking plant. Relax, you know. And I don't even smoke marijuana, but I believe in the right And it comes down to that. I'm doing it based off of facts and things that if you smoke marijuana and it makes you happy and you're not going to go home and beat your wife at night, or if you're an alcoholic and maybe this is something like whatever, or pain or who knows, whatever. There's a lot of benefits from marijuana. We can prove that. We can show that. And also, it's kind of propaganda. What we've seen back, Reagan and the drug wars and all that on and on and on and on. False. We can prove that's false. At what point are we going to say why is this a Schedule I drug and cocaine or all these other drugs are lower behind that when really cigarettes kill more people than marijuana?
Right.
Crazy. But again, I come down to you should have that choice. You should have that right. If you want prostitution, then and that girl is fine into it, and she doesn't want to work at Denny's, and she can throw down. She's like, well, I enjoy sex, and I can choose who I want to have sex with, and I can get paid for it. Then do it. And the only reason God, I might get mad at that.
Right.
If you're making a few bucks, but if you're, and it just at some point when we can start getting some more, atheist is the type of person you would want to vote for. It's someone that was going to hopefully, and again, everyone has different flaws, so I'm not throwing everyone to all atheists, but if someone's doing it based off of fact or judgment, or they're seeing face to face, or they're doing what the Bill of Rights and the certain things say, by saying, church and state separation, okay, then, and they're going to follow that guideline, they ain't going to bring, switch it up, then that's the guy you want to vote for, or girl. Or, whatever.
Because reality matters.
Exactly.
And people, it seems so cold to say so, but the fact of the matter is, reality does matter.
Yeah.
No matter what color this beer bottle is.
Yeah.
Okay? It's there.
Sure. Yeah.
In your reality and my reality.
Yeah.
I can choose to believe that in your reality that's a pot of flowers.
Sure.
But it's not useful to me.
Exactly.
It's an interesting study, but it's not useful.
Yeah.
You and I are communicating. We're both looking at it. That's a beer bottle.
Exactly.
Right? And so the data is the same.
Yeah.
And people understanding reality is important. I talk about this. For example, I am starting a bit of a campaign. I have a documentary that we talked a little bit about Mormons and sex and the sexual history of people who grew up LDS. And I've gotten some pretty high-profile members of the Mormon Church who are psychologists and sexologists and who are willing to talk on camera about this.
That's
and
awesome.
combine it together with people who talk about.
Yeah.
I had a girl who told me that she doesn't remember an age when she didn't masturbate. Who remembers an experience where she knows she was 7 at one time because her mother caught her doing it.
Wow.
And told her that is a dirty thing that after you were baptized you are not to continue to do, and I expect you not to do it now.
Yeah.
And so it's like, wow, that is incredible, and we there's this whole stigma around sex in the church.
Absolutely.
And it has to do entirely with aspects of control. Being able to control people. This idea that the natural man is an enemy to God. One of those, for the longest time, has been this pray the gay away therapy. Mormons practically invented this thing.
Yeah.
Right? It is now universally agreed upon by psychologists as dangerous. It is bad for you. It is bad for your mind. It will drive you insane, and it drives people to suicide.
Oh, yeah. And also the guilt of it, that God fucked up on you, buddy. Sorry.
Well,
and then not accepting them, not allowing them to be themselves in these things, and say they are hardcore Mormons, say they are Mormon, but now, from day one, they're taught, gays, no. I'm gay, fuck. Oh, shit. Right. And then they start hating themselves because they start believing it, and so on, and they kill themselves.
When I was 14 years old, I saw this interview, the most horrendous piece of biased crap you have ever heard. But I went to a Mormon school when I was young, a homeschooling group.
Okay.
And the son-in-law of Cleon Skousen, Glenn Kimber, was the owner and ran the school. And I got a chance to come to Salt Lake and hear the guy speak. And he showed us this interview between James C. Dobson, and who was a conservative leader, the founder of the Heritage Foundation, and which is all tied up in Mormon politics. Mormons basically use that as a vehicle to move political funds.
Yeah.
Anyways, but and Ted Bundy You remember Ted Bundy?
Classic Bundy.
Oh, yeah.
What, is that the pornography thing that he brings up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where he basically makes it clear, if you've looked at a magazine rack,
you're fucked.
You're
Ted
looking at Bundy.
Yeah.
That's right. You are Ted Bundy in the making. Yeah. The words he uses, they are Ted Bundy's in the making. And why? Look at his bias. He is hours away from being executed in the one of the most conservative states in America, Florida. And he's trying to make a last-ditch effort to appeal to say, will you please get the governor to give me a stay of execution? Give me a little more time. Yeah. I'm just a product of my environment, which goes into this whole interesting thing about, things to act and things to be acted upon, and so on and so forth. Pornography. I am convinced that this new pornography addiction thing is the new pray the gay away therapy. I think it is dangerous. I think that it is not real. And I am deeply concerned about the boys and girls who are being trained by the church to believe that they are addicted. Now, do I think that there is such a thing as compulsive behavior related to pornography, where people compulsively have to view it every day? They have to go, they have to get their rocks off. Some of them, whether they masturbate to it or not, totally. There are people who do it.
They're the same with the cheeseburgers.
Exactly. It's just like people who have to eat whether they're hungry or not.
You have to get fucking dressed, or you have to fucking shower. You have to do anything. It's repetition, and it's the same thing. And also, it's natural. If you do not masturbate and stuff, say you're a man and you're functioning normally, everything's working normally, and you hold out on masturbating, they can show that there's issues. Your testosterone, man. Have you ever? Oh my God, you can feel it. It's like, holy shit. And you can snap faster or whatever. Or even better, say you're leading up to sex or you're getting that erection and stuff and never come. Or the blue balls idea, right?
Right.
Fuck. You're mad, you're angry, you're upset, or whether it was with a certain person and it doesn't happen, you either have to try to get that out, or your day is ruined. And you physically will hurt, but also mentally, you didn't get that release. It changes something. Right? It's true.
Probably the most.
But it's the same thing with food.
Yep, absolutely. It's the same thing with money.
Yeah,
gambling.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people are addicted to gambling?
Sure.
And so, but what I'm saying is, there's addiction, and that's real.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm not denying it.
And there are people I am directly connected to in my life.
Okay.
Who suffered with addiction, serious addiction, and it ruined their lives.
Yeah.
And it ruined the physiology of their brain.
Oh yeah.
And it's a serious thing.
Was it drugs?
Yeah. Okay. Meth.
Yeah, that will do it.
Yep.
See, and that's that same thing too. It's that whole release or the same feeling, the drive. Pills, but that's the thing too. Half these Alpine moms take their kids to go get them Adderall,
absolutely,
and they go home and what do? They fucking clean their house, they vacuum it, they whatever. There was just a CNN thing about that just the other day about antidepressants.
I'm way more concerned about prescription drug abuse. In this,
Happy Valley was a great documentary on it too.
Right here in Utah,
yeah.
Than I am about boys looking at too much porn.
Yep.
I mean, and the fact that these two things have been
suppression
created.
too. I went to high school with a kid. You're suppressing them from sexuality, right? Mm-hmm. So what are they going to want? Fucking sex. They're going to look for it. They're going to want it. They're going to whatever. Crazy. And it's not. They're not supposed to have it. It's this forbidden fruit. But and you're making that addiction or that feeling 10 times better.
Right.
When it releases, it's like, oh. Fuck. Great.
And the guilt.
And then it comes down to the same thing. But I know that when you're suppressing people, I went to school with a kid a year older than me, and this was a few years back or whatever, and I saw it in the news. I couldn't believe it. Right? He's going to BYU. Mm-hmm. Home teachers. He was a home teacher, and he had known it was living on BYU property, everything, and had known there was a girl coming around that he had taught. That he was the teacher of, and again, he'd never had sex. He was kind of nerdy guy, just wasn't getting laid. Had never been laid, never even been touched. I'm sure porn was part of it, but whatever. He just knew, I got to get this out. And what did he do? She went in the laundry room to get her laundry. He was there. He shocked her with one of those a taser.
Oh my God.
And tried to practically rape her, and something happened. Like she hit him, and something happened with him, bounced off. But sure enough, he went to jail and all this stuff. But it's because he didn't know how to he didn't know how to release that. He also didn't. It built up. I'm sure there's much more into it as well. But it's he didn't have the qualities, or was never taught. This is how you deal with a girl. This is how you actually talk to a girl. And girls are okay to talk to.
Right.
And you know what? And you will get shut down. And there are girls that will like you. And guess what? They're going to want something too. They have the same hormones. They're going to want sex at some point. And and you have to release those things. It just built up. Got to have it to the point that he was physically going to take her, rape her, and whatever. And
because he had externalized. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but
me either.
He had externalized his guilt about it.
Yeah.
That's what rapists do. That's what Ted Bundy did.
Sure.
This isn't me doing this to you. This is me punishing you for what you do to me.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And yeah.
No wonder.
Yeah.
But so I saw this thing with Ted Bundy, right?
Yeah.
Afflicted my conscience.
Of course.
Right? When I was a kid, there were no pornos in the house. There were no Playboy magazines. My dad didn't do that.
You maybe get the Sears catalog with the bras. That's
the Mervin's catalog, baby.
Yeah,
I thought half of what was made women sexy was staring out the window comfortably in their bra and panties. Man, that was like
exactly.
Fuck,
sure.
And so, anyway, I felt horrible.
Yeah.
I went to the bishop at 14 and I confessed. I said, I masturbate.
Oh, can you believe that? Yeah, exactly.
And he looked at me and he said, and he asked me, he said, "What do you mean?" And I said,
well, what do you mean?
Well, I think you know. And he says, "I don't actually. The world will tell you that this is a normal thing. It's not. Nobody else is doing it. The other guys, I hear their confessions. The other boys aren't doing it. The girls certainly aren't doing it. This is you. This is just something sick that you do, Joey Rollins. This is something you do." And I was blubbering. I was tears.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a
made
mess.
You feel like you're going to be
absolutely
the next Ted Bundy.
And exactly. And I felt
you started to believe,
horrified.
fuck, maybe I am. Maybe
Exactly.
I can become that.
Exactly.
Maybe, oh, shit.
I don't know what I expected, but it's almost like I expected it to be like he was going to say, all right,
Ken Hellman.
Here's right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the reality. Everybody goes through this. It's a stage. It's totally normal.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a sin. This is how you're going to get through it. God will forgive you, but let's have a plan on how we're going to work our way through this.
Exactly.
He didn't. And then he asked me to give him the details. How does it work? And I couldn't tell him.
Of course.
I mean, I'm a 14-year-old kid.
And how wacky of that, by the way, if you're thinking about it, a 14-year-old, a minor, and a grown man saying, "How do you masturbate?"
Exactly.
Tell me how fucked up. That's
didn't
100% illegal.
It didn't seem fucked up at the time, but now looking back on it, it's like, oh my God.
Of course, same thing.
This is creepy, and it's me as one
Imagine
of the people
girls.
in this.
If a girl would ever come in and say, a grown man, a young woman, that's completely fucked up. And also, he has no psychology major. He has nothing.
No.
He's not there to do. And that's fucked up. You know, and you can fuck people's minds. Like, hence you.
Yeah.
Get fucked with you.
I am convinced that I endured trauma for that. Now I can choose to do something about that.
Yeah.
But the thing about it was, afterwards he reaches in to his desk. He reaches over and he pulls open his desk.
Yeah.
That's for everybody. He goes and he pulls out a big 12-inch dildo.
Yeah.
I'll teach you to think about these.
You want to masturbate?
No, he pulls out this. He's got this stack of pamphlets,
Of course.
and he pulls it out, and he pulls one out of the rubber band, and it says "to young men only," for young men only.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at that and going, "Okay, number one."
If you just said that you're the only one,
Exactly.
why is there a whole pamphlet
There's
on
a
this option?
stack of pamphlets. Yeah. Somebody thought they were going to give this talk more than once.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the second thought, where's the for young women only pamphlet?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We were treated to a different standard.
Sure.
Because it was believed that the girls didn't do this.
Yeah,
I ask girls all the time. Almost 9 out of 10 women that I ask in my documentary about Mormons and sex, the girls say they were never asked if they masturbated.
They were never asked.
They never asked.
Yeah.
Because, number one, the question is the same for the boys as for the girls. They just skip it. Why? It's not appropriate to ask for a grown man to ask a 14-year-old girl if she masturbates. It is appropriate for him to ask a 14-year-old boy.
And that's sexist in a way. I mean, that really, it's just...
Well,
and of course, we're more like...
Why should it be appropriate for asking the boy? Because he's a man, so obviously he's not sexually aroused by
I've been there, I've
boy.
done that. Yeah, and that's not necessarily true at all.
No, absolutely not. We know this for a fact. This happens a lot.
Yeah. And even worse, bishops take it too far with girls or boys, you know. And same with... And again, I'm not just saying just more. With Catholic priests, you know, you hear it out. But I know a mom who physically had her daughter. She went in for the interview. They asked her, hey... And he apparently he did ask, or she went in. It was something weird. She was getting her temple interview thing to get her stuff, and he's asking her, "Do you masturbate, or do you play with boys? Do you make out?" And she's like, "No, no," and she really didn't. And he's like, "I don't believe you. I don't. There's no way I believe you." And then he just goes on, and he had he taught the girl how to give him a blowjob. And had taken it even further and showed her, oh, this is how, you know, this. And when it comes to that time, and if you really haven't made out, you know, everything. And she went home, told her mom. Mom didn't believe her at first. And then she's like, whoa, is it really? And she's like, yeah, isn't this normal? And she's like, fuck, no, it's not. And so she started telling the other wives and started getting some people involved. And no one believed her. No one believed her. And the mom, no one believed the mom. And then sure enough, came out 6 other girls said, yeah, that happened to us too. We learned how to give BJs. And sure enough. And guess what? Still members of the church. How? Right. You know, fucking, I don't know.
The square. The little square.
Again. But very, very interesting, you know, and again, completely inappropriate questions to ask. And also, I legally believe you should not be a member of any church or anything until you're the age of, really, 18 at least. Right. But even then, you're still in your parents. We're talking Utah. You're still in your parents' house. You're pushed to go on that mission. I mean, now it's why they changed the age. Mm-hmm. It's because I didn't go on my mission because I turned 18 the end of my senior year. I still had one more year. Throughout that summer, you have the whole year, then 19. And then all of a sudden they're doing that. So they kick you right out the fucking door. There's no excuse. It's just you're out. Plus you don't have enough time to get a full-time job, to buy an apartment, to go to a place or whatever. And say they do kick you out. You're going to have a much harder time. It's all fucked up. It is. And it's all a game, and they know how to play it. And that's what they're doing. And I think it's sick. It's really sick.
Well, and I mean, what that experience...
And here's an 18-year-old boy knocking on your fucking door. Let me tell you how my God's better than your God. And also, and let me tell you, I'm fucking 18. I know it all, man.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself. Anyone who takes that seriously, it's just...
But you know what? At the same time, in Peru... You know, they say that, you know, in Japanese missions, they say...
Which is where my bishop had went, because I remember I was talking about Japan.
Oh, yeah.
But never had any success.
Yeah. Well, but a lot of people never have a single baptism in Japan.
Yep.
You know, and they have a saying, for every...
In fact, I just had my closest best friend,
no problem.
Just got back from Japan, left early, had thoughts of suicide on the mission. He's a missionary.
Holy shit.
Went to Japan. He was there 3 months. He got really sick. I remember he was telling us he was like on a bike, and he was biking with his guy, and he's just like, I really hope a fucking car hits me. Like, yeah, of course, he didn't say fucking, but he's like, I really hoped a car hit me. And he was in a tunnel, and he wanted to turn into the car and all more traffic, and like, awesome. They sent him home and stuff. But even when they sent him home, so you get your money, or there's a check for like the flight and stuff. They didn't even give him any money, and he didn't get to eat his entire flight home from Japan and nothing. They didn't give him any of his money, nothing to cash. They made him fucking just, here's your ticket, see you, elder. And he sat on that plane by himself, and then he went, whatever. He had no fucking money to get a drink, peanuts. He got what was on the plane, that was it. And even then, but like, you know, the flights, and it was multiple day flights, like they were gapped. They played it so well, but they made him suffer for it, and that's fucked up.
Totally.
So anyways... But Japan, they don't have success there, and you were saying.
And they have a saying that for every door you knock on in Japan, somebody gets baptized in South America. That actually is not far from the truth.
Yeah.
You know, we had a lot of success. We were young, 18, 19, 20-year-old, well, 19, 20, 21-year-old American boys.
Good-looking guys. Right. Well, fresh, clean suits.
I was there too, but, you know.
I meant you.
And you know, and to a lot of these girls who we used to refer to as snakes.
Were they the women that would try to...
They saw a green card stapled to your garments.
Exactly. I've heard many stories about that. Oh, here's my daughter, or, you know, just take them home, or have sex with them, or... Yeah.
Or, I mean, even something really benign. Like, I had this girl that approached me. She was an OBGYN. and she worked at the hospital. She delivered babies, and she basically made it clear to me, if you wanted me to come to America with you, this could happen. We could do it. And it's like, you have to be able to walk away from that. Anyways, but the pamphlet of the For Young Men Only, it starts out giving the little factory talk. It's talk by Boyd K. Packer, who right now is the successor of Thomas S. Monson. If Thomas S. Monson dies today, Boyd K. Packer is the prophet.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And he gave
I
a
didn't
talk.
know that. Okay.
This is a talk so old it predates the time when the church accepted blacks into the priesthood.
Okay.
And he gave this talk about the little factory. And the little factory, the little factory is basically that your body has a reservoir that it uses to create the life-giving stuff that God wants you to put in a good Mormon girl and make bodies for
and join
his
her
children.
factory and finish it and you ship it.
Well, no, there's really no talk about her factory.
Yeah.
Her factory is a cupcake, and once it's licked, nobody wants to lick a licked cupcake. That's what the girls are taught. You heard that, right?
No.
Girls are taught that your virginity, basically your hymen, is like a cupcake, and that once it's been licked, nobody else is going to want to lick it. So you're going to get this cool return missionary one day who's going to want to take you to bed,
a fresh
and
cupcake.
lick that fresh cupcake and find it already licked, and nobody's going to want that. And then the other one is chewing gum. Is that that your hymen is like chewing gum.
That's how low
once it's
it
been
puts
chewed. Nobody else is going to want to chew it. That's what Elizabeth Smart was talking about when she was kidnapped from over here in her home in Draper or Sandy.
It was Sandy.
Sandy.
It wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, but she was.
Or they found her in Sandy. She lived up like in Salt Lake or something.
No, she lived here in Utah County.
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay, you're probably right.
Maybe I'll look into it again. But anyways, she gets kidnapped. She gets taken into the mountains by this polygamist guy who's run off on his own,
version of his own Mormonism, and God came to him.
Like 13 years old, I think, at this point. 14.
I remember I was a young kid when all this happened.
I remember seeing it and just being horrified at the whole prospect of it. But she talks about that in school. They told her, This is sex ed in Utah.
Oh, yeah.
You are chewing gum once you've had sex. And the first thing that he did is he takes her out into the mountains. Young girl, he gives her a drink to drink from. Tells her it's, punch or whatever. And makes her drink it. It's not punch. It's alcohol. And she gets hammered by force. She tries not to. He tries to get his wife, who I think is actually his legal wife at that point, to bathe her. She doesn't want to do it, She tells her, look, I'm very clean. I can take care of myself and whatever. And then he rapes her. A few months later, they're down. She's wearing her polygamous garb, her polyg garb.
Plus the mask and stuff.
With the veil covering her face and everything. And they're going down to, I think it was like a farmer's market. They're in Draper.
Yeah.
And people, and she's following along behind him, and someone recognizes her and approaches her. Aren't you Elizabeth Smart?
And she's like, no.
And she just backed away.
Yeah.
She wouldn't answer them. And later, people would ask her, why didn't you say, yes, this is me, rescue me,
Yeah.
She was a few miles away from her house.
Yeah.
She could have been rescued. And she said, at that point, I understood that I was chewing gum. Because he'd had his way with me. And
she didn't want to go back to that life of possibly, yeah, that's crazy.
It contributed her indoctrination in the mainstream church, indoctrinated to this same philosophy because these things used to go together. This is how it was taught.
Yeah.
When 14-year-old girls were married to their 30, 40, 50-year-old cousins in Brigham's church, in John Taylor's church, in Wilford Woodruff's church. That's the way it's done in Warren Jeff's church. I guess technically maybe it's Nephi Jeff's church. And this is the way it was. This is the way it was done. We only recently. Here's the issue. The pamphlet, right? He explains your body's like this little factory. It builds up this reservoir of the stuff.
Okay.
Right? The miraculous stuff. And then it's got to be relieved. So it has an emergency relief pressure. Emergency relief
during your nights when it just does it by itself.
Exactly. He explains one night when you're having a particularly nice dream, God basically pulls your relief valve.
He's jacking you.
Yeah. Now, God has very severe punishments in store for curious little Aaronic priesthood holders who learn how to pull their own relief valve.
That's classic.
And that it will start to accelerate. If you're doing that, it starts to accelerate production. And soon you can't control yourself and control your urges. Yeah. And then as he goes through the pamphlet, and you're reading, this is the pamphlet that I was given, right?
Yeah.
And you get to the end of it, and he effectively says, little boys who are doing this, young men who are doing this, at some point will start to pull each other's relief valve. And before you know it, something you had never considered doing is going to happen. And you are going to wind up gay. Basically, he made it clear that masturbating would make you gay. And I mean, it was the creepiest thing I have ever experienced.
That's so crazy.
The question is, does it make a difference whether or not it's real?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people say, Gedona asks Korihor in the story, why do you interrupt these people's rejoicings? There are things that they are being taught that are wrong, that are not just unnatural, they're destructive and abusive to who these people are as men and women.
Absolutely.
And it has to be stopped.
Well, it's the same thing, too. It's like, Bill Maher talks about it, but, he's like, like whenever he's doing, his shows, and he has certain parts where he'll talk specifically about religion. He's a great comedian. He's always classic, and he's really well known with religion. And they'll always come up to him to say, "Oh, why do you always give the religious people such shit? Why don't you just leave them alone? It does good." And he just brings up the points. He's like, "Oh, really? Okay. So please tell me about the Salem witch trials. Then we can go deeper into the Crusades and the murders and the craziest shit that I've ever done. And then Warren Jeffs and the 14-year-old and Joseph Smith and the 14-year-old girls are fucked. And how and Elizabeth Smart all the way to where do I stop? Everyone just says it's like that religion does so much good. Leave them alone. They're fine. It doesn't hurt anyone.
It only teaches them good things.
It does not hurt anyone.
Right.
It does hurt people. It hurt me. I felt it. So you're again. It's like you denying my testimony by saying it doesn't hurt. The fuck it does. I remember masturbating, and I also remember the thoughts and knowing that masturbation and sex were right there and technically in the same sins as murder. If you kill someone, murder.
Yep.
And so here I am, I'm masturbating. My friend's on his way. He's going to come pick me up real quick. So I'm jacking it. Boom, done. I hop in my car with my friend. I remember driving. It was 4 miles, but I remember driving with my friend just wondering, if I get in a car accident today and I die, I'm fucked. I didn't talk to the bishop in the last hour or 10 minutes. If I get in a car accident and I die, that's it. I'm done. And I remember being so depressed and so fucking sad and back and forth. And I remember even when I was young, I had to go to counseling and stuff. And I tried to commit suicide because of the guilt I would feel around this and not knowing what was going on. I tried to actually end my entire life based off of I knew masturbation was bad and that I was doing it. And I was so scared I couldn't tell my mom and dad and I couldn't tell my bishop and this, and that I was going to end my fucking life because I couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
Well, and luckily I didn't, and it was a crazy story, but it came down to the fuck it doesn't hurt people. Don't again, lies are lies, and if I make up a religion today, then you don't add me in that boat. It's the same. It's look at Scientology. Scientology is absolutely nuts. And the funny part is the guy who started even says the fastest way to get rich is start a religion. he talks about that. And it's so Scientology hurts a lot of people. It's a very cult. They play this whole thing, but once you're deep into it, and they'll deny, and the celebrities are getting spoon-fed a different part of it. So when they're out there, they don't know shit. These other guys, they know what's going on. And there's even stuff that you signed a contract that you literally signed your life away for like 3 million years or something crazy like that. And the fear, but it's all horseshit. It's all crazy. But it does affect families. People, you can't have kids. If you're in this certain like SS or his captain part, you can't have kids. And so anyways, they would fuck and they'd have kids and they'd have to abort it or freak out. They couldn't because if they found out, then they were kicked out, and it just became this big ordeal and stuff. And it's the same thing, but cults do hurt people. And I'm not saying all religions aren't. But if someone's telling you, believe me, believe only me, and put your your little side blinders on, and just do whatever, instead of listening to yourself or questioning yourself or asking or figuring out for yourself, just trust me, believe me. Yeah, that doesn't happen I mean, look at business. Look at money. If you just trusted everyone, okay, just trust me. Just give me your money. I'll make you money, buddy. Okay. Okay. Here you go. I think that's why MLMs do so good here in Utah. So many people are already spoon-fed everything else, that if sister so-and-so is making money off doTERRA, well, then I better, or Sensi or whatever it is. And also the missionary style, that whole, they're already good at, this, that MLMs are perfect here in Utah, and that's just how they kill it, and that's how they make it, and they can sucker people into things that just don't make sense on how you're going to make that money back. But it's really interesting either way, all this stuff, and that's one thing that I'm atheist, but I do believe that religion harms people, and I'm speaking, I can speak from my experience. Mormonism harmed me. It hurt me. I've seen others. I have gay friends. It's so many other people, and to the point that people actually ended their lives, And I'm sure many other people can speak about their religions, and we can look that through history. Religion can harm people, and it's just more this: the fanatic cult or the obsession of the mind on a certain topic or certain thing or point A to point B goal, that you get in my way, you're done. And now it's becoming less used, if you want to say, like. The Bible says that if you're a prostitute, you should be stoned and stuff. And people believe that, I believe the Bible word for word. Every word of it is the truth of God. Sure. Then why aren't you stoning so-and-so down at the strip club, huh? Why aren't you? Well, but he means this, or right. We don't do that anymore. The law of the land overrules God's law. It's
you get to tell God what His word means.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why right there, you failed. And that's why, and I hate the Westboro Baptist Church a lot. I do.
Yeah.
But at least they're doing what they think they believe. If they're going to go out there and that God hates gays, then they're fucking preaching at 101. They're there. They're going to do their fucking thing. And at least here they're doing what they preach. That's the, except for, and who knows, maybe they've murdered someone. I don't know. But to that extent, have you ever seen Red State?
Oh yeah.
Like
awesome
that.
Movie.
Yeah, awesome. It's crazy. But it's really interesting either way. So, I mean, what other kind of things do you want to talk about? Is there anything else?
The most important thing, I think, maybe to kind of wrap it up, because there are people. I mean, I don't know that anybody's on live right now with that.
I don't know.
It is 1 a.m. or something, noon or midnight.
It's just barely midnight.
Oh wow! Well, here's the thing. You'll hear people say that leaving the church is painful because of social, stigma, and this is what I have found consistently with ex-Mormons, myself included, or post-Mormons as we tend to call ourselves, or ex-Mos. But honestly, I don't mind. I don't mind being called an ex-Mormon, or I don't even mind being called an anti-Mormon. I don't mind being called an atheist, even though I generally consider myself agnostic. I don't care. Call me that. Call me what suits your definition of me.
Sure.
I'd rather we were honest about it. But here's the thing, especially for people out there who may hear this in the long run and are considering leaving Mormonism. This is what you need to know. In my opinion, there's an angry phase. I don't know anybody who doesn't go through it.
The phase of right after the whole
you
hate towards the church,
right?
Or the
where you are determined to tear it down, brick by brick if you can.
Yep.
Where you want to every
you
Mormon,
want to tell everyone.
That's right, and you will ruin. And the thing is, you will ruin friendships. You will ruin your relationships with your families. I did it with both of my parents and almost all of my siblings and many of my friends. I lashed out at them, in anger.
And I'm right there.
And I did it out of hurt. That is the thing. Today, I can feel ashamed about it and say, that's stupid. I was being, I was, these people are doing the best they can with what they've got, with what information they've got.
Yeah.
And if there's anything I learned from the core horror argument experience, it was that we are all born ignorant. And we're all just doing the best that we can here,
Sure.
And the thing is that you're so close to it when you leave. And you feel For me, I call it being betrayed by God. And Mormons get all up in my face. You don't even believe in God. Fuck you. I've had Mormons actually tell me, fuck you. You don't even believe in fucking God.
Yeah.
Like that. And it's like, that's fine. You're in your angry phase, if you will, where you hate yourself for what you believe or whatever. Or maybe not. Maybe that's my bias speaking. But I look at that guy and I say, you know what? You don't know what I was going through. The thing is, I love how people say, I understand that you would leave Mormonism, but then you would fall back to Christian, but you should have fallen back to just Christianity. That you gave up on Joseph Smith, but you also gave up on God, as if by their own tacit confession, they believe that religion should be described in degrees of severity. Yeah. It's like, oh, have you seen Christian lately? No. Why? What's going on?
Oh, I've got plenty of that.
Oh, he got God. Yeah. What? He got God? Yeah, I mean, it's not like Scientology or anything, but it is Mormonism. Oh, shit, he got Mormonism? Yeah. Yeah. But fortunately, they caught it early. And he's going to recover. Yep. Exactly. So, I mean, he's going to have Jesus for the rest of his life, but that's going to happen. Totally normal people get Jesus all the time, live full, productive lives with Jesus. It's described that way, almost like it's a disease. Yeah. And the thing is, I never knew a God that wasn't Joseph Smith's God. I never knew a Christ that didn't come to the Americas in 3 Nephi 11. Yeah. That was everything about God to me. And when you are that deep into it, there is necessarily going to be an emotional knee-jerk reaction when you leave the church that's going to make you want to lash back out at God.
Of course.
When you come to understand that there's no one there for you to lash out at. Yeah. That you're wasting your breath. I'm not saying it's moral or immoral. Hell, I still do it. Right? But the plain reality is, don't let other people get in between you and this fictional God. Yeah. Because there's so much of that already happening. There are people in this state, I'm learning since starting into Mormon Sex, my documentary, that sue their children for custody of their grandchildren because they left the church. That happens.
Never heard of that. That's crazy.
It's in a Mormon court with a Mormon judge, they'll win.
Are you fucking?
It's a real thing. It's a problem in this state, and outside of this state. The pain of the ostracization is more than just family and friends. People lose their jobs.
Oh yeah. Especially if you work. Imagine you work for the church. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. But what were you saying?
But I mean, like this whole University of Phoenix thing. Yeah. I don't know if you heard about this, but I don't think so. Some people used to work for University of Phoenix when one of Mitt Romney's top supporters was president there. Sued University of Phoenix and won a several $1 million damages lawsuit on the basis that at that firm you were passed up for promotions and bonuses and performances if you were not a Mormon. If you converted to Mormonism, you did well. If you didn't, you were punished. And that happens in workplaces all over the world. Oh yeah. And I mean, the punishment is severe and thrift. Mm-hmm. And, there's necessarily going to be an emotional stigma to that. And it's hard to say, hold out for a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know that it's coming for you, The thing about reality and embracing reality and embracing your ignorance, I call it,
realizing it doesn't give a fuck about you, kind of.
This universe doesn't give two shits if you or I fucking live or die.
It's like the ocean, man. You're out there in your inner tube pops, and it's life depends on you. If you how you're gonna do, you're gonna sink or you're gonna fucking swim. But the ocean doesn't give a shit. Right? You swim, then you're fucking food for the creatures we were talking about on the podcast. It's great. Yeah. Thanks. See, but it doesn't have an emotion. It doesn't give a fuck. And the same thing with the sun. It goes up, it goes down. People die. No fucks given. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't care. And that's the same thing about Cosmos. I wish more people watched it. If you watch it, you sit there and you're like, and this is one thing you'll learn. the universe doesn't give a fuck about you, the world, the things. That's why you have to make your relationships. So what matters, the only thing that matters is other your relationships and you. And the experiences and how much love you're given. It comes down to love. And love is a different definition. Love cannot be defined, really. You know, how one feels it could be you're into BDSM, you're getting smacked, and that's fucking love, and you love it.
Hell yeah.
To me, it's not. But but
you're missing out.
love's one of those words that can't be defined, and that's what it comes down to, is how much love. How are you going out of your way to make yourself happy? Love yourself. Love other people you're around. And love doesn't have to be hugging and holding hands and talk. It just means that you are acknowledging someone for being another human being, this fucking weird planet, rock, spinning, whatever the fuck you want to call it. But it comes down to really loving yourself. And as soon as you love yourself, it allows others to start loving you too. And I'm not getting all guru or Deepak Chopra. It's just, it really comes down to you just gotta take care of your fucking self. No one's gonna take care of you more than you. Like you can expect that and think that, you're gonna fall every fucking time. So that's why you have to make relationships in your life the best possible, and always live. Again, if you believe in afterlife, great, but live like this is it. You have one fucking round. Make it a hell of a movie. Make it a hell of a show. End it with a bang. Beautiful. If you get another one, badass. If not, fuck, I did it. Hell yeah. You don't want to be in that hospital room sitting there. And this is how you kind of have to see it. Say you have time before you die, right? You're out ready to go, and you have time that you can hit up. You can make a Facebook status. Let everyone know you're about to die. Come to my fucking hospital room. Everyone, I want to say bye to you guys or whatever. How many people show up to that room? How many people's lives, you don't have to touch and inspire, but just that liked you, enjoyed being around you, that were influenced by you, or you were influenced by them and they enjoyed being around you, or friends. It just comes down to that. But how many people show up to that hospital room? Is it 2, 3? And I get it. Maybe a lot of your friends, they died before you. But it comes down to how many people are going to be in that fucking hospital room if they had the chance to come before you died and say, hey, see ya, thanks, or remember this time, or whatever. Or it comes down to just 2, 3, 1, 0, Ebenezer Scrooge, whatever. But it just comes down with relationships and just how you treat yourself. And then if you treat yourself good, and morals, it comes down to, I'm not going to kill you, please don't kill me. All right, cool. It's not because you're justifying it or thinking you're going to get this end God at the end of the life or whatever, and all these benefits. You are a good person because you believe that it's that. Now, again, what a good person is can't be defined as well. Everyone has a different definition. So you just be the best. You fucking enjoy it. Fucking enjoy it. Just like what you were saying, man. Just like what Cora Horror or whatever. Just why don't get involved in other people's lives. Don't whatever. If someone asks you a question, sure, answer it to the best of your knowledge. But just remember, it kind of always started off, my experience has been, because you can only talk for yourself. Or if someone allows you to speak for themselves because you know the story or something. But my experience, ... and with Mormonism is the exact same what you said. When I left, fucking hated the church. Fucking hated it. And still this day, not a fan of it. Not, but hated it. And I remember physically saying, I'm going to take down this fucking church. Like, I am the God. I am the fucking man that's going to take that church down.
I said that the other day.
Exactly. And it's one of those things, and it's a love-hate. I wouldn't even say I love it, but it just... it's this thing I have to deal with, and I'm here in Utah, but it's so funny. And again, if you're thinking about leaving Mormonism, realize you're and again, if you don't go out of your way and you hurt people and they leave your relationship or they're not your friend because you're not a Mormon, they weren't your friends. They're just, you will find so many other, leaving Mormonism, I have found some of the most amazing, realistic, true, nice friends, real relationships. You, yourself, we barely know each other, but we have this fucking connection that only certain people in this world have ever experienced, or, this ex-Mormon thing, like whatever you want to call it. But and there's get-togethers. We have fucking barbecues. People meet up. We talk all day on these Facebook posts, and we have fun. And you can do documentaries. And there's ex-Mormon literature. And there's also it's a church of its own without being a church. It's just we all have something in common, and we're all there to back you up. And we all have been where you've been. We've all been the betrayed mode. We've all been this and the Facebook statuses and letting people know and talking shit and whatever. But We've all been there, and guess what? The grass does get greener on the other side. It's a good time, and you make it what it is. Mm-hmm. And it may take you a year, it may take you 10 years, it may take you 15 years. It took me less than that. It took me at least 7 months to kind of just get over my shit and was like, okay. Mm-hmm. But everyone's gonna have a different experience. Just realize that you will make more friends. I mean, I can't say more. You will make friends on the other side. They will, and you'll have similar views, and you will be able to have a beer and not feel guilty. And it's this cool feeling, and it's a good thing to feel. And just an acceptance within yourself is something I've gained a lot. I don't know about you. I mean, again, my experience has been that I've just accepted myself, and I realized I'm a fucking chimp, man. I'm a chimp. I'm a primate. I'm an animal. So is my dog. I'm not expecting my dog to be anything else than a dog. I've got to be what I'm going to be, and I have to act on my thing, and I've just got to do what's best for me and best for my family, and enjoy the ride. And that's what it's been for me. And without thinking, oh shit, well, I might burn in hell for that one, or like it's all a joke, but it's a gratifying. It's like leaving prison. I don't know I was in spirit prison, if you want to call it that, being in the church and leaving. I got that celestial kingdom feeling. I feel great. I don't ever really apologize unless I say something fucked up. But my experience has been, it's been great for me. It's been such a release. It's been such of a feeling. And I just enjoy it, man. I don't know how about you.
Everything the worst possible, darkest scenarios that you can imagine resulting from your leaving the church are possible. You have to admit that. You have to be blunt and realistic with yourself.
And everyone's situation is different. Yeah. You may be on your own right now, your own apartment, your cash is okay, things like that. You may be living in mom's basement, and they'll kick you the fuck out. Broke, no car, no job, you're fired, you're fucked, and your friends and your girlfriend maybe, that's the thing too.
The thing about reality is that you have no assurance that everything's going to turn out all right.
Oh yeah.
Right? I remember I talked about this in the penultimate. I think it's still the penultimate chapter in my book. When a man dies, that is the end thereof. And I talk about when I left the church and when I stopped believing and attending church. They tell you when you stop attending church and you stop reading your scriptures, that's when the darkness comes to you. So I constantly was worried about that.
Sure. Oh, fuck.
There's the darkness following me everywhere I went, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't long before I found myself in the bishop's office again for the last time. For the last time, sincerely and honestly hoping to find my way back. And I sat there and I told Bishop Tate, he's one of the only people I don't redact his name. This man is a wise man who really did a great thing for me. And I just through my tears, I told him, I said, I need help. And he said, all right, what kind of help? I said, I think about killing myself. And he said, I love it. I loved it because he said to me, that's very serious, and I'm not qualified to talk about it. And I remember thinking, mad respect. The guy's a tax accountant.
Yeah.
He's not qualified to talk about it, and he knows it. And he says so. And he says, I'm going to refer you to somebody else to talk about it. He referred me to what was called LDS Family Services down in Mesa. People who are Mormons will tell you not to go there for psychological help. But he didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of this.
It's terrible.
Let's hear it.
I went to speak to somebody there, and the guy has his degree on the wall from Brigham Young University, classic. Right? Yeah. Basically, like there are these years, I think, when you study psychology and then you go out into the field to become a counselor and stuff like this, where you're kind of getting your clinical hours.
I know
working a minimum
UVU
wage
does like that, and BYU. Yeah.
So this guy's assigned to talk to me. He's not much older than I am at that point, and he comes in and he says, "So." He sits down in front of me. He says, "So what's going on?" I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. Is this how we start?
Yeah, exactly. Is that how this is supposed
myself,
to start? Don't I lay down on the couch and tell you about my mom or something?
Yeah, sure.
He says, and I said, "Well, I think about killing myself." And he goes, "Really?"
He's like, this is the first. Yeah.
Yeah. And he says, he says, do you think you're capable of doing that? I said, I don't know what I'm capable of doing. I don't know. And he said, it ultimately came down to, he said, tell me about your testimony about our Heavenly Father. You're a returned missionary. What do you know about that? What do you know about he says, have you considered what would happen to you if you did that?
And let's talk about that for 1 second. That is one of the most, I remember I was 10, 11 or whatever. I still remember how fucked up. Even I was 10 and 11, a full member of the church still believed I was drinking the fucking straw, dude. And I still remembered, that doesn't make sense. That's fucked up. That in Mormonism, they believe you end your own life. You've pulled the cord on your own fucking thing, that God gave you this beautiful life and to do and if you pull the cord, good night. You're fucking straight out of darkness. It's hell. I mean, right. You don't get, or it's telestial or whatever the fuck. But and I just remember being so young and thinking, one, that's fucked up, and two, no, God would not do that. No, God doesn't think that way. God would never, because every situation's always different. Number one. I mean, it could be, again, I saw Fury yesterday, and there's a guy, he gets blown up at the fucking take, he's on fire, and he pulls a gun to his head to alleviate the pain. Done. Okay, there's that situation. Or there's someone who's very depressed, sad, jumps off a dam, kills themselves, but leading up, what are the reasons why? Well, it's to alleviate the psychology or the thing, or it's a drug overdose and it was an accidental suicide, or they just rule all suicide, you end your life, but you're done. I just knew from a young age, God, I just started questioning God, I guess at that time. I just realized God wouldn't do that. God doesn't think that way, because you're not psychologically Joe, or you're not Christian. You're not yourself, and your normal self at that moment. You are so low, your chemicals or whatever, and you are not yourself when you're saying, this is it, see ya. Yeah. Like, that's it. Yeah. And I remember, even when I was trying to commit suicide and stuff, I was not myself. I don't know who the fuck I was, but I know it was all psychological. Mm-hmm. But I didn't give a fuck at that moment when I was ready to do it. Sure. I didn't give a fuck if I was going to burn in hell or whatever, because I wasn't thinking rationally. Right. I wasn't thinking myself.
When you're thinking, nobody wants
suicide, funerals, worst thing ever in the Mormon church. Oh, because they don't do that. They don't say that. They don't play that. Yeah. They just always, and the family's going to see their, I just remember, that's not what you teach. Right. Like, I remember attending suicide funerals saying, wait. And they're sitting there, the family's going to be with their, again, and they're going to be in heaven, they're going to spend, and families are forever, and thank goodness for God's, whoa. Okay, everyone knows, hold up, everyone knows this was a suicide, right? Like, and we're in a Mormon church, and you guys were Mormon, and he was Mormon, that's not what you teach. Why? And they were just false preaching it, because, again, they don't know how to say, well, unfortunately, this is the last time. Exactly.
The purpose is not to tell you what's real.
Exactly.
It's not
what you want to hear.
It's about what's going to help you to cope.
Yep.
It turns out there's a whole different doctrine that they tell parents of kids who commit suicide. Yeah. And that is that Joseph Smith once taught. Yeah, gotcha. Joseph Smith once taught that if a person ends their own life when they are not of sound mind, God forgives.
Well, any person that commits suicide is not at sound mind. So where's the other one playing to play?
Bingo. But that's not what you're going to put out there for everybody to publicly consume. But here's
okay.
So
you're there.
So I was in that dark place for a while, and my biggest worry is that I had to confront myself and say, okay, this is what they say is going to happen when you lose the faith. You lose the spirit, you lose the light in your countenance, and then you're going...
And life goes bad. They always scare you. They say that money goes bad, life, the job, you have drugs,
right? And AIDS. And I would think, if somebody could see inside my head and see inside this room right now, they would know that they would totally feel reaffirmed.
Yeah.
That, what was prophesied would happen to me is happening to me. And I'm sitting there talking to the guy, and he asked me about this and to tell him about God. And I said to him, before I knew what I was saying, I said, I don't know that I believe in God. And that was the first time in my life
You kind of admitted to.
I said that out loud. I remember thinking, wait, what?
Yeah.
What am I saying? I don't believe in God. I went through all of this crap. I made all these sacrifices. I did all this stuff for what?
Yeah.
And this is the reality. There are lots of people who leave the church in very similar circumstances and don't experience what I experienced. Mm-hmm. I had to come to the realization that why I experienced what I experienced is because I have depression. My serotonin gets low.
Yep.
Starts fucking with my brain.
Yep.
And I start thinking these thoughts.
Yep.
And even now, as I contemplate and deal with it, with anxiety and depression, sure. I think to myself, am I seriously thinking about doing this? Because I can. I know I can do it.
Sure.
And I think, why am I thinking about doing it? And when the logic doesn't add up, I can say, when was the last time that I slept?
Yeah, that too.
When was the last time I had a good meal? When was the last time I had sex?
Yeah.
When was the last time that I felt I was doing something productive with my life? No wonder no wonder I'm thinking these things. My serotonin is low. Mm-hmm. Then there are other moments where I am lucid and I am relatively happy, mm-hmm. and I think to myself, okay, now reanalyze those feelings.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the end of your life? How it's going to come? And when I am lucid and of sane and sound mind, I think I'd kill myself if I had the choice. If I could choose how I'm going to go.
That's me too.
I just do.
Is that really weird? But it's not. Like, I believe in assisted suicide, or at least, say I get cancer, right? And I brought this up, and there's that recent, that chick from Oregon and stuff.
Uh-huh.
She gave the certain date. She's going to end her life. I applaud her. I think, again, it's that whole hospital realm. If you can say goodbye to everyone and do that and do all the things you really want to quickly hurry and do before if you've ever been close to anyone who's died and again suffered from a certain disease, cancer, whatever, you see the chemotherapy, the shit, the bad. Again, you can beat it if you have a chance. If you know it's terminal, and there's a point where you start losing your mind, or there's Alzheimer's where you fucking don't even know who your wife is, and these people, you don't know who you barely remember shit, and you're whatever. I'm to that exact point that, and again, if it comes down to that point, I get sick and I'm hurting. What do we do with dogs, right? A dog gets hurt, sick, whatever. The best thing to do is what? Put it down, nice, and it's the most humane thing to do. Mm-hmm. What do we do with a horse? A horse breaks his leg, whatever. You fucking put it down. We're the only humans that allow our other chimps to fucking sit there in their hospital bed shitting themselves for X amount of months, years, coma, whatever, and suffer. It's all about, they have to suffer. They have to. Fuck that. No. Yeah. And that's the thing is I'm not going to say I will kill myself. And again, I don't have a kid out the door out yet. And I've always thought about that too. If life gets too rough or something, I just take the easy way out. But now I know it's going to be different having a kid, because it's not always just about me now too. It's going to be about I have another reason to live now, or hang out, and all fun and all these experiences that I'll now be able to experience. But if it ever comes down to the point that I'm terminal, then you know what? I'm all for it. Whether in Australia that you can do that, it's I want to say it's nitrous and stuff. They sell it as bubbler for making your own beer and stuff, but the company just sells you the canister, and they give you a plastic bag and a tube, and they say, you know what, if it ever comes down to that point that you want to, this is how you apply it, and good night. It's like, people fall asleep with or carbon monoxide. There was that family just recently down in, I think, the Spanish Fork of Springville. The whole family died. It was carbon monoxide or something. So they didn't know, and they all went in. And the weird thing is they found the entire family in the master bedroom, all in there, but they died of carbon monoxide poisoning. And I guess what happens during that carbon monoxide kind of stuff, you don't know what's really going on, you're sleeping, but you kind of wake up, it's kind of this gassy, like you're so out of it that you're almost on drugs and you're kind of whatever. And I'm sure that the kids or someone was like waking up like, I don't feel good. Like, I need to go to mom and dad's room. And anyways, but they all passed away. And as creepy and as weird as that sounds, and how sad, obviously, that it didn't have to happen, but it did. And that's what you have to come down to. They all went together, and it's interesting. And it's almost artistic. It's fucking weird. I'll give it that. But it's really interesting. And that whole, you should have the choice. I believe everyone should have the choice, and legally, and not get in trouble or sad and looked upon like this woman in Oregon that, oh my gosh, how could she do that? To suffer it out and to feel like shit and puke and die in the worst way possible instead of ending it at a decent moment. Again, could she have lived one more day? Yeah, sure. But to what point does she start to lose the sanity of, okay, I want to end it, and not being able to verbalize that, or what? And so it's interesting. And again, I can say that now, and then my views may change or whatever. But I believe that. I don't believe that's ever been bad. It's not bad if someone decides that they want to do that.
Well, you have to. I think that part of what makes it so dangerous is that the taboo of it, the fact that
For sure.
that we tell each other that this is not something. Don't take that as a possibility. Don't even say that. That's the first reaction you hear. People who are not suicidal say, don't say that. Don't say that. Why? I accept that's possible. I accept that. That means by accepting that,
and it becomes
the darkest thing. Yeah, and it means that every day that I don't do it, I choose to live.
Yeah.
It's the most optimistic thing in the world.
Today,
I didn't kill myself. Yeah. I choose to live today. What I choose to do with my time now is suddenly so much more meaningful. It's like Sam Harris says in his Death in the Present Moment speech. If anybody doesn't know it, go on YouTube. You look up Sam Harris, Death in the Present Moment. Most incredible thing. And he says, it is always now. Not from like some metaphysical standpoint. In reality, there's a moment that was the past. It's a thought arising in the moment. Mm-hmm. There's a future that's still unwritten. But in the moment, even you see with your eyes, you hear with your ears, everything that you sense with the senses is a memory. You're not even experiencing reality in the now. The only thing that exists in the now that is thinking and contemplating itself is you, the consciousness of who you are. Not even your brain, because your brain, there is a space of time between the neurons firing. Yeah. The mind is experiencing that even if you can't experience it in the now, that you can be aware that there is a now and it's happening now. Yeah. And it is always. Yeah. It's always now. And it's so mind-boggling to me because it's like I can choose to spend my days drinking day in and day out.
And you're technically still in that now, but you're less mental up there to the point. Like, again, I enjoy a nice liquor here and there and beer and whatnot, but every day of going back to that numbness that you're not doing much. Right. And it's the same thing with phones, when we're talking about porn, people are addicted to their fucking phone. That whole pick up, swipe, go through the homepage. Okay, I didn't get any new Instagram or Facebook. Okay, put it back. 10 seconds later, it's that same addiction and stuff. And how much of the now are you wasting on this sub now, this other alternate reality world, instead of, looking at other people's pictures and stuff? Go out and take pictures. Go out and fucking do something you're not usually doing or experience now. Do something weird. Do something different. Go fuck something. I don't know. Like, experience a now with another now, another person, and it makes it that much more fun. Or whatever. But that's a great thought. That really, it's my memory, and me saying this is history now. Like, that's fucking. It's a mind trip. It's one of those things. But I enjoy that because what does it do? It causes you to critically think. Right. It causes you to actually use your fucking brain. Yeah. And it's such a good thing to use. And I love thinking deep stuff. I love those mind twisters or deep questions or how do you explain. And that's the thing is, question yourself. I know that it's fucking really weird, but it is really interesting. When you're going back to that French scientist and stuff, but it's from Assassin's Creed. It just says nothing is true, everything is permitted. It's an interesting thought. It's just, nothing, what's true is true to you. Again, this church is true. That's true to you, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true, and it's just nothing is true. Everything's permitted. It permits to certain things and certain laws of physics and, whatever, but you just have to just enjoy your fucking life. That's the whole point. And if you're not enjoying it, you're not happy, or you don't feel loved or liked enough, or you're not feeling complete enough, or whether you're in religion or not, whatever, then find something. Go get a dog. Go, get a kid. Do something.
Accept the reality that your reality can change.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this moment, you can choose to be spending your time doing something else, because eventually you're not going to have now anymore.
Yep.
That's going to be gone as far as we know.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not, I'll be fucking surprised and amazed, even if I'm in hell.
Yeah. Sure.
But I look at it and I say, for now, I have my now.
Yeah.
And I can choose to do something and that brings me joy.
Yeah.
As long as I have it now.
Yeah.
And that is my truth that I know so far, is that, in this world, I have experienced something really, really heartbreaking and troubling and painful, and I've come through to the other side of it. And there are people in this world, millions of them, I am certain, in the next 100 years who are going to go through that. Who are going to experience what I experienced. And, I can use my now to say, expect this. The angry phase is going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to ruin some relationships, possibly.
Or they won't be, it may not always be you. Again, they could, because you are being you, they could discontinue your friendship together. And that's the thing is, accept that that's normal. Don't feel like you're not being normal if you are going through your angry phase. Don't listen to anyone who says not. Yeah, you may have to tone it down. Maybe you take it too far. Who knows? But you could be the own judge of you, because there's no right and there's no wrong. It's all up to you. If people are offended, then that's on them, and you have that right to freedom of speech, and you have that right to be yourself. But anyways,
Except that any of the darkest possible outcome could happen.
And the greatest thing. Yeah. On the opposite, you may meet someone who you really like, and you may marry him, or you may just have a great friendship, or you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. That's the best thing to do. Instead of always saying, what the worst thing, because I have that thing. I was like, when worst comes to worst, it's kind of brainwashed into my brain. Like if me and my wife are out doing something, I'm like, well, okay, so if worst comes to worst, then. But really, it's such a dumb thing to say. It's just like, what if ... happen? Like, why not try to, shoot for the stars, and if I fucking land on that moon, awesome. Shoot, and don't be upset with it. Make goals, do fun stuff, meet friends, meet other people, and read. That's what I think is most interesting. Is I never started reading until I got out of high school, and reading books or other thoughts and sharing other thoughts or podcasts or videos or documentaries, or go out and make something, create something, or watch something, learn something. That's what you got to do. Fucking when you die, you should have learned a lot. Hopefully. And most of them are just natural life lessons that your parents were trying to teach you, and then you realize, oh, they were trying to teach me this shit. Okay. Like, we all look back, and it comes down to what you were saying, like, accepting your parents and just forgiving them. It's that whole, you drop the hate. I don't hate you. You were doing the best you could. Yeah. And it's the same thing with my parents. When I look back, the only reason we got into Mormonism, my parents were both converted when they were in their families. The only reason, my grandma told me this, because I was in my angry mode. Well, I just had to announce this to her. I just had to let her know that I was leaving the church. I felt I had to. And she didn't care and stuff. And I said, well, what was the reason you guys joined that church? And she said, these two Mormon missionaries that came knocking on our door. And they lived in Simi Valley. And my grandpa retired LAPD. My grandma owned floral shops and stuff. She just said, we were living in California. It was the 80s. People were getting pretty wild. Cocaine, things were going nuts. Everyone was just, my kids were being wild back then. And again, kids are always being wild. Yeah. But, back then they were just whatever. And she's like, I like their morals that they just said they don't drink, they don't smoke. And I just like that I could push that on my kids and just say, well, you can't. And the funny thing is, my grandparents, they don't go to the temple. They don't do the temple stuff and whatnot. And they go to church and they the nursery or the classes or whatever. But she never was mad at me, never hated me, nothing. And then I go to my other side. And, I asked my dad, what happened? Because my grandpa had went to Vietnam, came back from Vietnam, and a whole nother fucking man, dude. And that's when Mormonism kind of came into play. And my grandpa, he's a hilarious guy, but he is conspiracy 101. He's met one of the three Nephites kind of guy. He literally has told stories about this: aliens, the Bigfoot, the UFO, the barn lifting up and flying away, the craziest shit that you could ever imagine. And then he joins Mormonism, and I just had this thought the other day. I'm like, Dad, you know, I can't be mad at my dad because he was with his dad, and that's the funny thing about my dad. He will admit when my dad, he's like, the last time I ever met my dad, me and my grandpa, is when he left for Vietnam. When he came back, a whole nother fucking person, you know. But that's the reason they joined Mormonism. I mean, this guy will leave me voicemails. He'll call me up and say, "Hey, grandson, the red dragon is coming. The end of the world's on its way. The comet, get ready to go. If whatever happens, then I'll see you on the other side." And then hang up. And these are the voicemails I'm getting. So crazy things. But that's a point. It's just like, who got you into this church, Dad? Come on. And my dad will laugh at him all the time because he's told us the world was going to end 30 times. The Nephite stories, my dad just laughs it off, and I'm like, whoa, like, this is the guy that got you into it. Maybe he was a little wacky. Maybe he just, but it was an interesting thought. But we'll leave it at that. Pretty much, use your head, critical thinking, learn, read, enjoy your life, be happy, and if you're not happy, talk to me. I don't know. Just find someone or go see a psychologist. There's nothing wrong with seeing a psychologist. If you're sad and you're depressed, and there's nothing wrong with depression pills or antidepressants and stuff. If you feel that you're to that point, not everyone needs them. And sometimes it's you. You just got to fix shit for yourself.
And
you can't just expect
this is not a
meds
consequence. This is not a punishment on you for something you've done.
Yeah.
This is you. You always had this coming.
Yep.
If you, especially people with depression, which is a lot of people out there, and you leave, and you think that these symptoms are a result of what's going on, this was always coming for you.
Yep.
And it's just you're now in a position to embrace that it's real.
Yep.
And do something.
Yeah. And, if you have a hard time, take it slowly. Back out slowly. Do your thing, whatever. But, don't lie to yourself. That was the biggest thing that I just couldn't sit with. And I just have held true to it. And I like that characteristic about me because I see a lot of people who lie to themselves. They don't believe the church, but they're still going. They're still doing their thing. They're still wearing the garments. They're still whatever. And I'm like... And then they'll sit down. They'll have a beer. They'll have, sex. And they'll drugs. And it's like... Okay, you're either one or you're the other, dude. And don't sit here and ever try to preach to me... it's just like, relax.
Say, I'm not perfect, dude. I know that. And it's you're not perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So, we'll leave it at that, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to thank you, Joe, for being on this podcast, putting up with our malfunctions of our technical difficulties, I guess we can call it. And this was the longest podcast I've ever done, so welcome to history. This is history. If we combine them, it's definitely long. So, again, we're ending this bad boy almost fucking 1 a.m.
Nice.
Awesome. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I'm glad. By the way, shout out to Tosh. Thanks for coming. But dude, I really just hope. Again, the only point of this podcast was to relieve and get some shit off me. Yeah, but just to